Hello and welcome to Six Path. Today I'm gonna start a new series. What if Deku had the Six Path Quirk? Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
A boy was sitting on the pavement close to a playground in Mustutafu, Japan, when some bullies beat the poor child to a pulp while he wiped away the tears that were streaming down his cheeks. The youngster in question had fair skin, green hair, and eyes that matched. He had on red shoes, khaki shorts, and a white shirt. The child, unable to contain his tears, muttered, "Why is Kachan always so mean? I thought we were friends." He turned to see a pale-skinned girl with lavender eyes and short white hair standing there when a female voice said, "It doesn't sound or look like he's your friend anymore." She wore nothing except a white sundress and white shoes. Awed by the girl's attractiveness, the greenette gazed at her. His cheeks flushed as he stared at her for a moment, then glanced down. He said, "He wasn't always like that. He only got that way because I don't have a quirk. He doesn't want me to overshadow him," he continued. The girl sat down beside him and pondered. "It sounds like he has an inferiority complex. Someone needs to knock him down a few pegs," she said. The youngster, fearing that mom would beat him up, told her, "Why, you don't need to do that." The girl said, sweeping her dress aside, "Oh, I won't. I don't want to mess up my dress. My mother will kill me otherwise." She grinned and said, "I'm Kagaya Usagi, by the way." The boy with the viridian hair smiled back and said, "Izuku Midoriya." When Kagaya saw that Izuku's blush had persisted since they had begun speaking, she burst out laughing. She laughed and said, "Your face looks like a pink tomato." She grinned and said, "It's actually kind of cute." Kagaya laughed at Izuku's shame as he shouted, "It's not my fault, it's yours for being so pretty," before slapping his hands over his mouth. The girl leaned in and kissed him on the cheek, thinking, "Well then, I suppose I should make up for that, shouldn't I?" Kagaya chuckled at Izuku's expense, and all he could do was splutter in shame. This was the beginning of a long and productive friendship. Time skip. A few months later, Izuku was attempting to protect a different child from some bullies once more. This time, the attacker was a Pomeranian blonde boy of a similar age with red eyes, and the victim had a kitsune quirk that gave him a foxtail and ears. The blonde boy in question was accompanied by two other boys. A plump boy wearing dragon wings and another with long, straight hair and a liney smile. With his emotions growing stronger by the moment, the green-haired lad asked, "Why are you being such a bully, Kachan? You're making him cry." Deku, the red-eyed Pomeranian boy, smirked and shot out, "Don't act like you can do anything without a quirk, Deku." Then there was an explosion as he slammed his fist into his other hand. "You're being such a jerk. Can't you see that?" the freckled boy screamed back before his eyesight blurred with annoyance and a naive wish to try to win his friend back like the old days. Tears streamed down his cheeks, causing him to close his eyes before opening them slowly. When they looked at Izuku at the other boy's side, they saw that his eyes had changed. In addition to having a dark ring around the pupil and two tomo marks that resembled commas, his viridian orbs now appeared to have become a deep scarlet. Pudgy boy said in shock, "What the heck happened to your eyes?" Until the blonde smirked at him, Izuku wasn't entirely sure what they were discussing. "I'll tell y'all what happened. Dead last Deku over there just brought out his quirk," he roared. Adding, "Let's put it to the test," he punched the green bean. Izuku's body seemed to respond on its own, turning on the ball of his foot to avoid the explosion-packed right hook, and time seemed to slow down. After that, he abruptly delivered a powerful left hook to the blonde's face, causing him to stumble to the side as the long-haired lad attempted to attack him. However, a botched backpedal and an inadvertent fall later, he collided with the trio's leader and fell to the ground. For a few seconds, the two of them pirouetted out of control as the freckled tyke stopped and let go, sending the other boy flying face first into the other two boys as his course of direction and momentum resumed. The three of them lay there in a sore heap. The young boy flailed his arms around, trying to get his footing from his balance and reactions being knocked off due to his enhanced perception. He accidentally grabbed onto the chubby boy's wings as he swooped down at him. After a few seconds of stumbling around dizzily, the curly-haired boy collapsed on his face, his eyes turning into swirling spirals due to the dizziness. The explosive Pomeranian moaned, "I guess Deku isn't as useless as we thought." In unison, the other two boys answered, "Looks like it." This was actually the greeting Kagaya received when she arrived, and she blinked at the sight. "Izuku," she exclaimed as she hurried to embrace her longtime buddy. She asked, "What happened here? Who did this to you?" As his eyes continued to swirl, Izuku moaned, "NGH, Quirk came late, tired." Before remembering the other child's presence, the girl was perplexed by this explanation. She turned her head and glared and growled at them, her eyes suddenly tensing and revealing their veins. In essence, this was her own peculiarity, Byakugan, which was based on the same named Kekkei Genkei. She snarled, "I'll break their fingers." The lads moaned, "Too late," and then passed out. The veins around the white-haired girl's eyes disappeared as she looked at Izuku and the bullies, and then she picked up her closest buddy and took him to the hospital. Time skip. Tatooine Station, Mustafu, Japan, 10 years later. On his way to school, the same child, now 10 years older, dashed through the streets with the same Pomeranian blonde hot on his heels. The two of them laughed and grinned at one another. The blonde called in a humorous yet rough voice, "Damn it, Deku. How many times have I told you not to run in front of me? I always take point." Explosion was Katsuki Bakugo's peculiarity. By causing the nitroglycerin perspiration he created to explode, this power enabled him to create explosives. This green-haired boy called back, "Not my fault you can't keep up, Kachan." Izuku Midoriya is this person. Sharingan was the name of his quirk. In order to react more quickly, mimic their movements, and even create mild hallucinations, it allowed him to slow down his vision of the world around him. It made him a little stronger, too. However, as of yet, it's unclear if it has any further powers. The children observed a big supervillain making a lot of noise throughout the area as they hurried to the train station. Fortunately, Kamui Woods, Dead Arms, and Backdraft showed there to attempt and stop the impending fight. Izuku turned on his eyes and began memorizing the battle. As he watched, Katsuki growled, "This is going to cause us to be late." "Shish. I want to watch Kamui and Backdraft so I can improve my wood and water release jutsus," the child screamed. Izuku has a little-known trick like this. In reality, his eyes were a Kekkei Genkei, a sacred bloodline talent. This dojutsu was believed to be long extinct. Izuku was descended from one of the fabled ninja clans, the Uchihas, and the techniques were the abilities that ninjas of the past utilized to accomplish amazing feats by using their chakra. He started looking up everything he could about his forebears after realizing what he actually held. Let's just say that he discovered a respectable quantity that would give him a solid foundation. After less than 2 weeks of non-stop practice with Bakugo, he first acquired the Uchiha's fire release skills. Then he found that he was also very good at releasing water and, most unexpectedly, using wood release. The Senju were known for that particular sort of chakra, which was heritable. He found out after doing some genealogy research that he was part Senju and part Uzumaki on his mother's line, in addition to being a Uchiha on his father's side. His body became extremely strong and resilient as a result, and he had a natural talent for medical ninjutsu and faster healing. Additionally, his friend constantly struggled to get beyond his skillful use of the interceptor fist. It goes without saying that the lad has learned over the past 10 years that he was not the helpless and unproductive child his friends believed him to be in those days. Even though he was still quiet and unimposing, most people simply assumed that he was a good-hearted and innocent person. He became known as the Leaf Green Ninja as a result. When Kamui began fighting the villain, the boys were still watching the fight. He was getting ready to use his unique move as it got more intense. Here it comes. Izuku smiled, watching every action with his two-tomo Sharingan. Katsuki also shouted, "Come on, Kamui. Show that bastard what a real hero does to win." Binding, he began. He, Kamui, and Izuku shouted, "Lacquered chain prison," as branches sprang from the wooden man's arm in the direction of the enormous attacker. Canyon cannon. A woman's voice screamed, "Bam!" A gigantic woman appeared out of nowhere and quickly pulled him out before the branches could join. The two boys were stumped by that. For heaven's sake, they really thought Kamui Woods would win. "Hi everyone, I'm Mount Lady. And I'm the newest hero on the block." She smiled flirtatiously, showcasing her pretty nice but shaped hips. She gave her ass a little shake and grinned, saying, "So don't worry, you won't have to deal with this bum anymore." "Fan service?" Bakugo questioned without elaboration. Izuku nodded, "Yup." The voice next to them remarked, "You know, it's annoying how female heroes are so okay with flaunting their bodies like that. It gives us girls a serious stigma." The two boys almost jumped out of their skins when they turned around and found Kagaya standing next to them. Katsuki yelled, "Why do you keep doing that?" Since childhood, Kaguya's attractiveness had significantly improved. Her white hair was long enough to reach her heart-shaped ass, and she even wore red lipstick. Her physique was much more voluptuous than the typical young girls. She was dressed in the school uniform for girls that they were going to. She had many admirers and was referred to as the school's most gorgeous girl. Rolling her eyes, the girl sneered, "Oh, grow a pair, Katsuki." She got on her tiptoes and kissed the boy on the lips, cooing, "Good morning, Izuku my love." Izuku sighed and held Kagaya close, saying, "Good morning to you, too, Kagaya, my beloved." Yes, Izuku and Kagaya are now dating. They took almost all of their classes together when they started middle school. They eventually fell in love and got together because of how well they kept this ongoing communication. Izuku received a lot of jealous looks from the males for making such a catch. Surprisingly, Katsuki was not envious of the green-haired boy on that subject. Grumbling, the blonde said, "Get a room, both of you. No, seriously. Go to a love hotel. I do not need to see you two constantly all over each other all day," he continued. Kagaya put her head on her boyfriend's shoulder and said, "If you get a girlfriend, you'll understand the feeling." "Bitch please," the boy rolled his eyes in response. Izuku led his girlfriend to the train station and interrupted, saying, "Let's just get on the train before you two start arguing." Later, the children sat in the trio's classroom and listened to their teacher's lecture. The man picked up a stack of papers and remarked, "Now, since you'll be graduating this year, it's important that you think seriously about what you want to do with your lives. Before throwing them away," he remarked, "now I could pass these career aptitude tests out. But why bother?" he said, "I know you all want to go to the hero track," as the class erupted. Bakugo simply placed his feet on his desk and grinned. "Why bother? Me and Deku are the only real deals here. Don't lump us with these extras," he sighed. The children shouted, "What? You think you're better than us, Katsuki?" The blonde shot back, "Shut up, I'll take you all on." "Ah yes. Bakugo, Midoriya and Usagi. You three are heading for Ua, right?" the instructor responded. Kagaya grinned and said, "Indeed we are." "The national school?" a startled youngster asked. Another said, "But it has a 0.02% acceptance rate, it's impossible to get in." The Pomeranian laughed and asked, "Is that supposed to stop us? We'll be more popular than All Might himself, and be the richest heroes of all time. And it all starts with Ua High," he said. Izuku called in jest as he started writing in a different notebook, this one navy blue with a paper fan beneath a red half circle. "That's assuming I let you take the #1 spot for yourself," he said. "Is that a challenge?" Bakugo returned with a rocket. Their teacher cut them off before they could finish their teasing. "Boys," Kagaya rolled her eyes and moaned. He went to the board and said, "Okay, settle down, you two. We still have class to do." Later, everyone began preparing to leave for home after class, but Izuku was occupied with writing in the same notepad. This was his top secret ninjutsu techniques and Uchiha, Senju, Uzumaki clan restoration notebook, not his hero analysis notebook. He was currently occupied with trying to jot down notes on how he might use Kamui Wood's special move to advance and potentially develop new jutsus for his Wood release. However, this was cut short when Kagaya gave him a back embrace, and Katsuki quickly grabbed his notebook. "Really? Still working on this?" he asked himself, examining the document. Izuku turned to Kagaya and kissed her on the lips, saying, "You know how I am about this. I could actually get a degree in quirk analysis if I keep this up." Izuku saw that Katsuki had switched his quirk analysis book with his restoration book, and he waved the latter in front of the white-haired girl for her to grab. Katsuki said, "Wasn't talking about the analysis." Izuku yelled, "Gimme that, you jackass," and lunged for Katsuki, but the notebook was thrown toward Kagaya by the exploder instead. Upon receiving the notebook, the girl immediately began to scan through it, much to Izuku's dismay. Her cheeks quickly turned pink as she read that Izuku had devoted an entire section to his plan to restore his bloodlines, with her as the focal point. She laughed just as she reached the sentence that said, "Optimal number of children. Era, already thinking about the future that involves us being married, are you?" she asked. Her brain almost began to steam as she noticed the number. 10? She exclaimed, startled. "I want a big family." Izuku almost cried out in shame, burying his face in his hands and obstructing Katsuki's laughter. "Well, I certainly wouldn't be opposed to that, necessarily," the girl thought after turning her head away, her face still burning. While concealing her flushed cheeks and lips behind the book, she questioned, "But, how many would you want at first?" Then Izuku squeaked, "2," with a soft smile. The Byakugan girl approached her boyfriend, took his hands away from his face, and planted a kiss on his lips. "I think I can work with that." With a purr in her ear, she asked, would you like to get started after school? The Uchiha lad swallowed, stumped for an answer. Katsuki was unable to contain his laughter and began rolling on the ground in response to the boy's response. Later, Izuku chose to take a detour beneath a bridge after he, Kagaya, and Bakugo split ways, but he felt as though something was weighing him down. As he examined the bracelet, which was composed of blue jade beads with a charm of the clan crest on it, he asked himself, I can't help but wonder, am I doomed to fall victim to the Uchiha's curse of hatred? The Uchiha frequently dealt with the curse he was referring to. Despite their strong commitment to friendship and love, they have a tendency to hide their more loving qualities. An Uchiha's love can quickly turn into hatred when the object of their devotion is lost, making them more likely to do whatever it takes to fulfill their ambitions and demonstrate their superiority, regardless of the costs and ramifications of their acts. In fact, this had a tendency to negatively impact their Sharingan, and unless something was done to help them, they would be consumed by this hatred. Izuku was quite concerned about it. He was lost in his own thoughts when he didn't see a pile of sludge form behind him. As it pushed its way down his throat, he was frightened and instinctively used his Sharingan. The sludge exclaimed, "Good. You'll make a perfect skin suit," before the boy abruptly vanished and was replaced by a brick. "What the?" exclaimed the monster. "That," Izuku uttered, panting, standing a few feet away with his back to the exit, he said, "was a substitution jutsu. And this?" Before doing a series of hand seals and concluding with the hand sign, Tora, he shouted, "is goodbye. Fire style. Grand fireball jutsu," and then abruptly began to breathe fire at the sludge. The creature yelled, "Gah!" as he narrowly avoided the blow, his body scalding from the fire. Prior to making a ram hand sign, Izuku stated, "I'm not done yet." He uttered, "Ninja art. Multi-shadow clone jutsu," as 5 of his own clones materialized. The youngster and his clones shouted, "Alright guys, let's fry this greaseball. Fire style. Phoenix flower jutsu," before launching a barrage of fireballs at the villain. The villain let out a horrified, "Oh shit," as the attacks began. The man appeared to start running away as a result, running straight into a huge man who was blocking the exit. He said, "Have no fear, because I am here," and then he threw back his fist. He slammed his fist forward, shouting, "Texas Smash," which dispelled Izuku's clones and sent the villain flying everywhere. "Whoa!" Izuku exclaimed as he focused his chakra on the soles of his feet to root himself firmly. To his surprise and delight, he peered as the wind blow subsided and found All Might standing there. "Holy crap! All Might, you're actually here," he was gasping. Observing the fire marks surrounding the tunnel, he nodded and said, "Indeed I am. And I see that you held your own." The boy nodded uneasily and said, Hey, yeah. I kinda went overboard." After that, the two began collecting the sludge villain into a bottle, and All Might even signed Izuku's notepad out of courtesy. But the Uchiha descendant realized he had forgotten to ask him a crucial question as the man leapt away. He yelled, "Crap," as he utilized his chakra to leap over rooftops and run on the walls of surrounding buildings. He told the man, "Hey All Might. Hang on. There's something I forgot to ask you," as he followed him by jumping on roofs. Startled by his actions, he called out, What question could be so important that you do this, instead?" "I'll tell you once you land. You seem preoccupied at the moment. Look out!" The child shouted at the man who was going to land on a nearby roof, running headlong into a flock of pigeons. He exclaimed, "Whoa!" When the pigeons circled him prior to his landing, he mumbled to himself before Izuku arrived. "Sometimes I hate putting up with birds when I fly to get to places," he said. "Now, your question was what?" "I don't suppose you've ever heard of the Uchiha clan?" he inquired. When Izuku used his Sharingan, the man's heart nearly stopped. Yes, actually. They were an interesting clan, despite their curse of hatred. "Why do you ask?" he said. He stumbled in surprise. But then that means you're..." Izuku nodded, further startling the man. "Yep. I'm a descendant of the Uchiha clan along with the Senju and Uzumaki clans." The man said, "That is, Amazi, as he abruptly gripped his side as his body trembled in invisible agony and steam began to emerge from it. The child raced up to the man and shouted, "Oh no, All Might. Are you okay? What's wrong?" he said urgently. The number 1 hero's body was briefly bathed in steam before it dissipated. Izuku was unprepared for what he saw. It was a bony skeletal blonde with a skeletal-looking face, not a muscular male. The man plopped down shakily, and the Uchiha descendant gasped, "A All Might?" Still in almost catatonic awe by the man's metamorphosis, he questioned, What happened to you? Well, y'all know how fat guys take a deep breath and pretend to be buff at the pool. I'm basically like that these days, he responded. With astonished eyes, the descendant of the ninja asked, What in the world even caused you to be like this to begin with? The man raised his shirt to display a genuinely horrifying wound that appeared to be a hole that had been punched in the man's stomach and had been terribly patched up. I think it's best if I show you. The boy felt like throwing up because of how awful the purple-red flesh looked. This is how. I got this in a pretty grisly fight 5 years back, he clarified. My stomach was completely torn out and my respiratory system was badly damaged. Now I can only work as a hero for about 3 hours at a time. The boy asked, Was that the fight against Toxic Chainsaw? The man laughed and said, No, not that one. But good eye though. But no, this fight was against an old enemy of mine. One that I did my best to keep under wraps. So that the symbol of peace can still stand. Izuku sat down and nodded before beginning to search through his backpack. After a few seconds, he produced what appeared to be an injection pin-like device that contained a purple liquid. The Viridian-haired ninja tossed the gadget to the hero and said, Here. He grabbed it and examined it. What's this? He raised an eyebrow in question. A healing elixir made from my blood. It has properties similar to Hashirama Senju's cells. Izuku clarified. I'm not sure if it's potent enough to heal both your lungs and your stomach. But it should at least regrow your stomach. That way you can put on weight and hopefully take the strain off your body, if only just a little bit. He said. But be sure to take it in small doses. Preferably twice a day for 2 weeks. My blood type is type O, so it should be compatible, but better safe than sorry. With wide eyes, the hero glanced at the elixir and then back at the teenager in front of him. Before this child showed there and gave him this elixir, he was happy to continue with his profession as it was. As he put the elixir away, All Might said, Thank you, young man. He went on, Now, back to your question. Izuku sighed after nodding, Oh. Right, All Might, do you think it's possible for a guy like me to become a hero? Even with my clan's heretical curse? He inquired. All Might understood his concerns as well as his point of view. He was able to calm him down. If you can stay true to yourself, I believe that you can escape its grasp. Do that, and you'll have freed your clan from the curse, he concluded. Izuku got up and nodded, I see. Thank you, All Might. The hero answered, You're quite welcome, young man. And good luck. Izuku nodded before beginning to jump from building to building, landing on the street, and walking home. Later, Izuku considered what All Might had informed him as he strolled on. Was it really that easy? Could he be true to himself and stave off hatred? On paper, it seemed so simple. The Green Leaf Ninja was still thinking about this problem as he was walking home when a nearby explosion diverted his focus from his digressions and he proceeded to look into the source. What was that? He cried, running to the scene on foot. He spotted a lot of smoke as he continued to run, and as he reached the source, his eyes widened in terror to see the same sludge monster from earlier attempting to capture someone, Kagaya. Izuku exclaimed, Wait, I thought All Might? Wait, before recalling the pigeons. He must have dropped the bottle when they crashed into him. He was gasping. With a determined expression, the youngster dug into his bag and took out a bag of shuriken and a marker. And he's used up all his energy, it's too risky. I need to stop this guy before Kagaya gets seriously hurt, he shouted. He fastened the shuriken to his belt and swiftly scribbled the wood symbol, Mu, on his palm with the marker. He then laid his back down and, without even thinking, charged into the battle, performing multiple hand seals while dead arms screamed at him. The demon released his hold on Kagaya and gave her an opening when Izuku threw 2 shuriken at its eyes. The child slapped his hand on the ground and cried out, Wood release. Demon Maiden Wooden Dome. 6 wooden pillars emerged from the ground and began to close in on the sludge villain. Cone-shaped spikes on the pillars faced the beast, and the sight of these was enough to convince him to release his partner, allowing the White-A to break free just as the dome was closing. Kagaya watched the dome close and swore, Damn, that was close. Her partner heard her say, Thanks sweetie, I owe you a kiss. As green liquid began to seep through the wood's cracks, the ninja informed him, Don't thank me yet, that dome won't hold him for long. Look. We need a way to incapacitate him for the count. But I don't have anything on my person for that, he said. Can't you just burn this creep? Asked the attractive woman with violet eyes. Tried that already the first time. Plus it had caused too much collateral damage, Izuku informed her. Then it struck him. Damn it, if only I had a stronger jutsu, like a water style one or something, he added. he said. Got it. Kagaya, cover me, as he leapt back and began rapidly applying hand seals. To distract the sludge villain as Izuku went through hand seals for his strategy, the girl began to throw a series of jabs. As he and Bakugo attempted to maintain their distance, Izuku repeated, Ushi, Sera, U, Ne, Ii, Tori, Ushi, Uma, Tori, Ne, Tora, Inu, Tora, Mi, Ushi, Hitsuchi, Mi, Ii, Hitsuchi, Ne, Jin, Sera, Tori, Tatsu, Tori, Ushi, Uma, Hitsuchi, Tora, Mi, Ne, Sera, U, Ii, Tatsu, Hitsuchi, Ne, Ushi, Sera, Tori, Jin, Ne, Ii, Izuku repeated, making the appropriate hand signs to the chants. However, their breathing room was dwindling. All Might, meantime, was observing from the audience. While he was helpless because of his time constraint, he tightened his fists as these two youngsters risked their lives to defeat this villain. I'm pitiful, disgusted, the man thought, returning to the couple in the interim. Izuku made the last hand signal and yelled, Tori, as he and Kagaya leapt behind a manhole cover between two storage drains that the villain was standing above. The boy shouted, Water style, Water Dragon Jutsu, as the drains began to tremble. As the heroes and onlookers gazed at the ground, water erupted from the drains to form a massive eastern dragon with brilliant yellow eyes. With a roar that reverberated for miles, the construct glared down at the sludge villain, who now appeared appropriately apprehensive. Then, with a roar, the construct smashed the villain with its jaws and huge body, sending it flying into a neighboring wall and splattering all over the place. After absorbing all the water, it reformed even larger than before. The two teenagers shouted angrily, Oh come on, as Izuku collapsed to his knees and turned off his Sharingan. Before turning to face the now giant enemy, he told his girlfriend, That's it, I'm out of chakra. He went on, and now we're screwed. The Byakugan user said, Damn it, that should have diluted the bastard, to his frustration. According to the boy, apparently not. The young man had staked everything on that one move, and it didn't work, so All Might gritted his teeth. He grumbled and made himself bulk up once again before charging in as the monster was about to knock the children down. Have to do something, he said. Huh? When the pair realized there was no pain, they left. As he stopped the attack, the muscular hero thought, I really am pathetic, aren't I? As blood spurted from his mouth, he screamed, I told you what it meant to be a hero, but now I see I wasn't living up to my own ideals. He prepared a punch and exclaimed, Pros are always risking their lives for the sake of others. Instead, he yelled, Detroit Smash, as his punch ripped through the adversary and sent a tornado flying. Before the game force winds ceased blowing, everyone covered their faces. Then the rain came down out of nowhere. Kagaya lifted Izuku's left arm over his shoulders because the latter was exhausted, and everyone except All Might glanced up. Izuku looked up weary as the crowd began to chatter among themselves, and Kagaya said, Hey, Izuku, check it out. The weather just changed. Panting, he said, Huh? How about that? He wanted to retire to bed immediately. Reporters then surrounded the two till they left to return home. Later, Izuku ran into a skeleton man he recognized on his way home. The child said, Huh? All Might? When do you get here? He answered, I just escaped the reporters. With a solemn expression, he said, as a small token of appreciation for entrusting me with your heritage knowledge, there's also something I'd like to share with you. That being? Inquired the child. I've actually been on a long hunt for a successor, one that would take up my mantle as the symbol of peace one day when I'm gone. The man replied. And today, when I saw you jump in to save a life, even though you knew you were low on chakra and still didn't hesitate. You inspired me to act too, you acted like a true hero, he went on. I refused to let my best friend die because of that sludge villain. Izuku gave a nod. With her arms extended, the blonde informed him, but beyond that, I've decided on something important. I deem you worthy of my power, my quirk is yours to inherit, he said. Wait, inherit? Izuku questioned, perplexed. The Usagi family stood out as a unique case in an area that was primarily recognized for housing the wealthy families of the superpowered world that planet Earth had become in the nation of Japan. It was not because the patriarch or matriarch's eccentricities were especially notable, or because their wealth had been acquired through shady or unlawful means, or even because the home was abusive. No, nothing like that. Instead, the Usagi's rarity in their particular group stemmed from the peculiarity of their only child, a daughter. The cause of that? The child had her own Byakugan and was essentially a perfect replica of Kagaya Otsutsuki. A blood test swiftly dispelled early concerns of adultery on the part of both parents after it was established that the child was indeed theirs. The charges were replaced by confusion, leaving both parents perplexed as to how their daughter came to be the way she was. Nevertheless, since they had a pretty decent notion of how beautiful the rabbit goddess would grow up to be, they chose to go ahead and name their daughter after her. Speaking about Kagaya, she was in her room right now, putting on her typical red lipstick, when she heard a voice calling from downstairs. One of the women downstairs cried out, "Kagaya, are you finished yet? Your breakfast is getting cold." Kagaya cried back, "I just finished," as she gathered her belongings and hurried downstairs. She didn't need to dress up because she was already wearing her uniform. Shinobu Usagi, her mother, sighed as she gave her daughter the plate with her breakfast. "Honestly, hurry up or you'll be late," she said. This was a stack of peaches and whipped cream on top of Japanese pancakes. Though she had a pale complexion more typical of Japanese women, with brow orbs similar to Kaguya's, raven black hair, and brown eyes, the woman's appearance wasn't all that different from that of her daughter. Like her daughter, she too wore red lipstick. In contrast, her quirk gave her a tail and a pair of rabbit ears, which were now protruding from her apron. She was also quite the beauty, as her figure, which included her peach-shaped ass, 106 centimeters cup rack, and childbirthing hips, had led to several comparisons to Tsunade Senju. As she began to eat, Kagaya moaned, "Bad I'm not part rabbit, or I'd be faster." Shinobu shrugged and said, "At least you still have your Byakugan." The girl almost choked on her coffee as she said, "You came in quite flustered yesterday after that sludge villain attack. Did something happen besides that I don't know about?" "What?" she asked himself. The woman grinned and said, "Don't think I didn't notice." She asked, "Now, out with it, what happened?" "Well, please don't freak out, but," the girl sighed after saying that, "Izuku told me that he wants to marry me and have 10 children with me," she said. 10? Shinobu said, her eyes widening and her jaw dropping. He virtually yelled, "Does that child want that big of a family?" Kagaya was only able to nod. "He made it very clear that he wanted to give me as many children as he possibly could, since I never had any little siblings to take care of. He wanted to help fill that void." She gave a nod. "I swear, that boy is too good for this world," Shinobu said, laughing and shaking her head. With a flush, her daughter informed her, "Well, that's what I was flustered about." She cried out, because I want to marry him just as badly." "Oh, sweetie," her mother trailed off, embracing her. She groaned, "This must be gnawing away at you." All Kagaya could do was nod. "I wasn't sure if you'd approve. I don't want to do something that'll make you angry at me," she sighed. "I've known Izuku since he was a preschooler, and I know he wouldn't do anything you didn't want," Shinobu stated to her. "I can tell he's not trying to be an uncaring fool, but rather, he just wants to help get what both of you want," she went on. Her daughter said, "So, you wouldn't mind us getting married?" "No, I can see clear as day that both of you would sooner disown yourselves and get married anyway than let us tear you both apart," the woman who was older said. The girl sighed and said, "Mother, somewhere else." Shortly before this, at the close of the day before, after All Might had just declared that he thought him, quote, "worthy of his power, and that he may inherit his peculiarity," Izuku turned to face him in bewilderment. The boy questioned, "Huh? What do you mean by inherit?" Don't get me wrong, he was familiar with the idea of inheriting specific bloodline techniques, Kekkei Genkei. Even if you weren't a member of the clan from which they originated because of his studies into the Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki clans, as well as the ninja community in general. But the idea of using a quirk in the same way, he was totally unfamiliar with this concept, which is why he is currently confused. The man informed him, "It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a sacred torch passed down to me by someone else," he shouted. "Wait, hold on," Izuku exclaimed. "I mean, I'm well aware of Kekkei Genkei being able to be passed on by gene splicing or implanting the eyes of dojutsu users into their eye sockets, but this is completely out of nowhere. Quirks aren't like Kekkei Genkei, so they shouldn't be able to be passed on," he went on. All Might started to feel a headache coming on as he went on rambling. As a drop of perspiration trickled down the side of his head, he thought, "He's beginning to overthink it. Quit nerdin' out," he yelled, interrupting the boy's digression. "You'll have to adjust your knowledge and accept this new truth. My quirk is the only quirk in existence that can be passed along. And that's only one facet of its special abilities. According to the descendant of Uchiha, okay, but what's it called?" "One for all." It's a stockpiling quirk that grows in power as it's passed along, growing in strength as its users improve it. The brunette clarified. It is this power that allows me to be the symbol of peace. The truth behind my strength. But why would you want to pass a power like this on to someone like me? Izuku inquired. I saw you back there, you acted like a real hero. Unsure if you could win, knowing that you could have been practically powerless, but still you and your friend pressed on, against impossible odds. You were the bravest of all on this day. The symbol of peace took his words very seriously. He said, so, what do you say? Do you accept? Izuku nodded without hesitation, saying, without a second thought. Excellent. Then we'll start training early Sunday morning. Be ready, the man said. The boy nodded, right. The following day. Returning to the present, Kagaya heard struggling coming from Dagoba Beach, a nearby beach that had been converted into a dump, as she was making her way home from school that evening. She went to have a look and blinked when she noticed Izuku hauling rubbish with all might, of all people, watching over him. As an inquisitive girlfriend, Kagaya made the decision to look into it. As Izuku was still having trouble with it, the man called from his position on the kitchen appliance. Hey, it's pretty comfy here on this fridge, how are you doing down there? He said, disparaging his student, people move these every day, ya know. And most of them don't have any super strength, or something similar. The boy gasped for air and said, yeah, but I've got an extra 600 pounds sitting on the one I'm pulling. Nah, I've lost weight so I'm down 560 these days. In this form at least. But, thanks to your healing capsules I should be able to eat and get that back. The man responded. As he stood back up, Izuku exhaled. Great, much better. Why am I even lugging this stuff around again? He inquired. I did some online research, and found out that this place used to be beautiful. But then people started dumping their garbage here and ruined it. The individual clarified. So, your training will also double as community service in a sense, he continued. Practical and good use of hero work training. Nice. The child commented. He looked at all the debris and said, but, how am I gonna clear all this in 10 months? The man gave the youngster a stack of papers and stated, don't worry, I've got you covered with my aim to pass. American Dream Plan. Follow this to the letter and you'll finish everything in the 10-month time frame. I even planned everything else while I was at it, he went on. Izuku remarked, whoa, even my sleep is scheduled. The peace symbol questioned, if I'm being honest, this is going to be super hard, think you're up to it? Izuku nodded and said, you know it. Then he glanced at the schedule and saw something. No chakra training. I guess it wouldn't make sense if you handled that, given your lack of experience in the shinobi arts. He thought about it. That's actually it. I figured I'd let you handle that part on your own since I don't know anything about chakra training, really. All Might acknowledged. Then he saw Kagaya approaching them. Izuku noticed his girlfriend coming as he said, oh, hello there. Izuku grinned and said, oh, hi Kagaya. He was happy to see his sweetheart. The girl with the light skin asked, what's going on here, if I may ask? The boy answered, oh, All Might's helping me get ready for the entrance exam. Recalling the talk from that afternoon, he trailed off. I actually offered to bring Kachan along, since he could have helped with the chakra training, but... Rewind. Izuku and Katsuki were now practicing for the UA admission exam by sparring in a deserted area of town. The blonde also wanted to show his pal something. The red-eyed boy exclaimed, explosion style, C4 barrage, as he made a number of hand gestures before spitting a glob of clay into his hands, covering it with the sweat and chakra that gave him his quirk, and throwing it at Izuku, which broke into multiple pieces and exploded in his face when they were at close range. As he stumbled back from the blast, Izuku growled, damn, you're getting better with your explosion release. Given how challenging it was to use his quirk in the winter, Katsuki nodded and said, yeah, I gotta say, with moves like this I'll probably have a way to fight with no risk and have something to fall back on in the winter. Yeah, Izuku nodded and took a seat on a cracked concrete slab, with his pal following suit. After a minute of silence, he remarked, so, All Might approached me yesterday. He offered to train me for the UA entrance exams. The Pomeranian exclaimed, seriously? Why? Did he see what you could do at the sludge villain incident? He continued. That's probably it. I was gonna ask if you could join us when we started tomorrow, that is, if you want to. His pal informed him. After a minute or two of silence, Katsuki shook his head. He smirked and said, no, I mean it sounds great, but if I'm gonna get into UA, I want it to be on my own. My way. Besides, pretty sure you need it more than me, Deku, he said. Looking at his slender arm, The green-haired youngster thought, I'm still pretty thin, aren't I? Pretty thin. You're about as thin as the twigs you make when you use wood release. Katsuki chuckled. With a flat tone, Izuku said, oh shut up. End of flashback. Izuku's mentor and girlfriend both started to perspire as he said, so, yeah. Classic Katsuki, the girl pondered. However, she ignored this when she came to a realization. With her arms folded beneath her DD-cup chest, she pouted and asked, then if you're going to be training here, does that mean you won't have time for me in the next 10 months? Izuku ran over to her right away and embraced her. It's going to be a long 10 months, my beloved, but by the end of it, it'll be worth the wait. He said to her. Both of us will be even stronger than we are now, and we'll have a lot of lost time to make up for. So go and do what I'm doing. Get stronger. He went on. We'll do whatever you want when both of us are in UA, he said. Whatever I want, purred Kagaya. She leaned into her boyfriend's ear and said, oh, I'll have a lot to do with you in 10 months, my dear. She licks his ear with a sultry seductiveness and purrs softly, so I suggest that you start stocking up on some good condoms. Why yes, dear. Izuku exclaimed, flushed. She leaned in and kissed him, whispering, laughing, that's a good future husband. Shoo, she crooned while giving him a passionate kiss. Watching his student make out with his pretend lover, All Might stood awkwardly to the side, wondering if he should try to get things back on track or give them some privacy. Evidently, Kaguya's decision was made for him when he smiled at Izuku and withdrew. She said to him, goodbye, Izuku. I'll be waiting. Izuku let out a sigh as he saw his sweetheart go. Once Kagaya was out of range, the peace symbol deflated, noting, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that she was your girlfriend, right young Midoriya? The boy sighed, yeah, and she's amazing. He said, her name is Kagaya, Kagaya Usagi. She's practically a spitting image of the rabbit goddess herself. Her parents definitely knew what to expect, the man said. Izuku laughed and sighed in shock as he said, oh yeah. You have no idea how right you were on that front. He bemoaned, I just set myself up for a long 10 months. In an attempt to defuse the situation, All Might shrugged and said, at least you know it'll be worth it. Yeah, but you have no idea how torturous not being able to spend a lot of time with your friends can be, especially a girlfriend. He gave a long sigh and agreed. Before shaking his head, the man coughed faintly, remembering his earlier days. I kinda do, he said. He yelled, but enough of that. Back to training. Nodding, Izuku said, right, time skip. This nightmare began around 3 months ago when Izuku was having a shower during one of his school breaks and was fetching himself a drink after getting out of the shower. He was only wearing shorts at the moment, so his growing muscles were visible. But he was alone now, or more accurately, he ought to have been. A voice crooned from behind him, found you, as he felt a pair of round, velvety orbs pressed to his back and someone embrace him. Despite his flush, Izuku couldn't help but laugh and ask, couldn't resist the chance, could you? As she seized the youngster and shoved him against the wall, Kagaya complained, I've had to go 3 months without being with you. She pouted and said, it's made me want to kiss you so badly. She then began making out with him passionately, and Izuku couldn't help but groan and kiss him back because he missed this as much as she did. However, he was aware that being caught would be detrimental because they were in the school gym. Kagaya, he groaned as he pushed her away gradually. We can't do this, at least not here. It'd be bad if we got caught, he stated. The pale-skinned beauty pouted, clearly disliking that they had to stop. I hate it when you're serious about this, she said. Squeezing his personal goddess ass and receiving a gasp of pleasure in return, Izuku said, if I find myself with a day off, I know what we're doing. Izuku. The girl moaned and gasped as he repeated it. She realized and said, just what do you intend to do to me, then, if that's the case? He whispered into her ear, his lover blushing as he said, I think I'll do a lot to you. She said, I can't wait, before departing, albeit reluctantly. Time skip. Izuku worked steadily for 5 months after his training began, attempting to adhere to All Might's training schedule while also spending his days off to meditate and practice his ninja techniques with Katsuki. However, he also made an effort to gradually increase his workload in order to finish his assignment ahead of schedule and free up time for Kagaya and his ninja training. But his pragmatist and kind-hearted commitment to efficiency would soon catch up with him. The teenager, who was carrying a safe over his shoulder, suddenly passed out as he and All Might were walking through a park. His mentor paused and turned to face him. Seeing how overworked his student was, the man asked, hey now. Don't stop kid, you've only got 5 months left. What, you want to flush it down the toilet and take it easy? Wait, you're overworked. You're doing more than what the plan states. That's going to have the opposite effect of what we want. You won't be able to pass the exam like this, he stated. His apprentice moaned and stumbled to his feet. With gritted teeth, he exclaimed, I don't want to pass, I want to excel, I will do whatever it takes to reach the top, as he stared up at his mentor, his third tomo burning with resolve in the right side of his active Sharingan. The boy's intense emotions led his Sharingan to change in front of him, and the symbol of peace stared at him in shock. You must give it to the child. As he went buff and grabbed the boy by the collar, he thought, he's thought a lot about the future. I appreciate your fighting spirit, fanboy. It works for you, he said to his apprentice. I do get your concerns, but now is not to rush progress. Fear not, I can help you get back on track. Leave it to this old man to adjust your plan, he continued. The boy's feeble statement, you're not an old man, All Might, caused his master to chuckle. Later, Izuku groaned as he collapsed onto his bed to relax as All Might had advised, and as he started to nod off, his room's door opened. Kaguya was the one. She decided to give her green-haired partner a hug after giving him a thorough examination, removing all garments till her pristine white skin was exposed, leaving her naked. The youngster didn't protest when the female, taking a deep breath, hid beneath the blankets and pulled him close. He felt that he needed this at the moment, not because he was overly exhausted. His face was quickly buried in his girlfriend's nude bosom as he rolled over, the snow-white globes surrounding his head like a pair of marshmallow pillows. He asked, Kaguya, why are you naked? Holding him to her breast, the girl asked, You're my future husband, aren't you? Isn't it only natural that a husband sees his wife's naked body when they're in bed together? Izuku leaned in to give her a kiss and said, Hey, fair enough. When Kaguya followed suit, they turned over again, Izuku on top and Kaguya on the bottom. The lad took off his own clothes to feel the smooth skin of his sweetheart on his own. He sighed as he gazed down at her, both of their faces flushed by the moonlight streaming in through the window. You're so beautiful. He kissed her once more and said, I love you. More than anything else in this world. Kaguya sighed, rolled them both so she was on top, and gave him another kiss. Thank you for loving me so much, she said. Sitting on his lap with her hips aligned with his, she said, Everything is so perfect right now, would you like to take my virginity? Izuku responded with a strip of 6 condoms, Luckiest, I have this. He made the decision that now was the moment and that he would take advantage of it. The girl unpacked one and placed it on her tongue, thinking, well then, itadakimasu, she groaned, diving to the boy's pelvis, which made him groan. Kaguya, he groaned over his joy. Tonight was going to be quite the adventure for him. Time skip, on the day of the test, All Might sighed as he stepped out of his automobile, feeling a little better because Izuku's healing capsules had allowed him to eat once again. He was on his way to the beach when he heard his student's distinctive yelling voice and halted. As he approached, he saw him standing on top of a massive heap of trash. "Hey!" the youngster exclaimed, standing on top of the evidence of his labor, snot streaming down his nose from the cold because he was currently shirtless. Holy crap, kid! You cleaned up this entire beach, the man exclaimed, surveying the shore, which appeared to have never been dirty in the first place. You even got the trash outside the designated area. You did this with only a few minutes to spare, and you've completely exceeded my expectations, he went on with wide eyes. Holy, stinking, super crap! He cried, his face erupting in shock and awe. Izuku stumbled a little before he dropped off the trash pile and landed in his mentor's arms, who grabbed him. With his left Sharingan now sporting its third tomo, the child said, I did it, All Might. All Might nodded as he put him down, saying, Yeah, you did good, kid. I expected you to finish, but this is beyond. Looking at the youngster's newly enhanced body, he remarked, I mean, look at yourself. Such improvement. I'm quite sure that your ancestors would be quite proud of how far you've come. The boy was obviously jacked. His slender frame was gone, replaced by a six-pack wielding, well-chiseled runner's figure. Indeed, he had made great progress. With tears streaming down his cheeks, the child nodded and said, I really worked hard, harder than I ever have. Great-grandfather Sasuke, great-grandmother Tsunade, great-aunt Karen, ancestor Madara, Hashirama, Tobirama, I did it. He was whispering to himself. When his student showed such pride in his work, All Might couldn't help but smile. He picked a hair from his head. Izuku looked up and he said, Now for your reward. He went on to say, Eat this. Huh? He said, perplexed. The man explained, "You have to eat my DNA to inherit One for All?" The boy objected, saying, "This isn't exactly how I imagined it." All Might force-fed the youngster as he wailed, saying, "There's no time, now hurry or you'll be late for the exam, now eat. Eat." Later, the Senju, Uzumaki, and Uchiha charms on Izuku's bag and bracelet jingled in the cool breeze as he groaned and made his way to the school's campus. As he kept going, he moaned, "URG, that was disgusting." Then he noticed Katsuki approaching him from the side. He said, "Hey Kachan." The explosive teenager smirked and said, "Hey, Deku. Ready to show the world that chakra's still awesome?" The youngster nodded, then felt someone bump into his back and jump onto it. He then felt two very familiar soft globes pressing into his back. "Ready as I'll ever be," he said. He smiled and sighed, "Hey, Kagaya." The white-haired girl purred into her lover's ear, "Hello, my beloved ninja." As they strolled ahead, the blonde remarked, "You two seem different." Izuku told him awkwardly, "We couldn't wait for when we got into UA and we, well, consummated our relationship." Katsuki asked incredulously, "You mean to tell me that you, little old lowly Deku, got your V-card swiped?" Before turning to face Kagaya, he went on, "By her. The most popular girl in our crappy school?" "Bullshit," he went on. Kagaya chirped, "Except it actually happened." She smiled as she kissed her lover's neck and added, "And I regret absolutely nothing." The boy chuckled at this. Before he stumbled over his own feet, he said to them, "Come on, let's hurry before." As he slid forward, he thought, "Well, guess I'll just die." He was confused because he was unaware of the third Tsuchikage's flight technique, but before he could reach the ground, he found himself floating. Yes, he was aware of that. He simply was unable to find out how to do it. His attention was drawn to its owner by a girl's voice asking, "Are you okay?" A brunette with pink cheeks caught his attention as he turned. Because of the cold, she was currently wearing winter clothing. As Izuku straightened himself up and let the girl regain his composure, she continued, "I hope you're not mad I used my quirk on you, but tripping on exam day sounds like bad luck to me." Izuku nodded as he brushed himself off, just before Kagaya gave him a strong, pouting hug. "Thanks. Don't start staring at other girls. You're off the market," she advised him. Izuku laughed and planted a kiss on his girlfriend's lips, saying, I know. I can still make friends with other girls, though." The girl asked, "Oh, are you two dating?" The white-haired girl nodded and said, "Yes. My name is Kagaya Usagi, and this is my boyfriend, Izuku Midoriya." Izuku waved, "Hi. And the Pomeranian jerkwad over there is Katsuki Bakugo." Kagaya pointed to a blonde who was suddenly furious. "Oh fuck off," was Katsuki's reply. The girl with the pale skin asked rhetorically, "See what I mean?" Before letting out a sigh, the brunette said, "Well, I'm Ochako Uraraka." She asked nervously, "Man. Isn't this, like, way nerve-wracking?" Izuku said, "I find it won't be as bad if we just don't think about it." Kagaya nodded in agreement, saying, "It does make life easier, that's true." Before gasping, Ochako laughed and said, "I guess I'll take you up on that advice." She said, "We're going to be late," and hurried away. The teenager with the Pomeranian hair said, "Let's move," and started to run, with Izuku and Kagaya following closely after. Later, after leaving Ochako to locate her designated place in the theater, Izuku was eventually able to grab a seat with Katsuki and Kagaya once more. As they listened to the voice hero, Present Mike describe the test, he was muttering numerous strategies he could employ to maximize his achievement and minimize the expenditure of his significantly boosted chakra reserves. This was typical of Izuku. He was halted, though, by a boy wearing spectacles who pointed out something strange about the booklet. He stood up and yelled, "Excuse me. You failed to mention anything regarding the fourth opponent in these exams. If this is a mistake, then it is disgraceful. We are exemplary students, and we expect the best from the greatest institution in Japan," he said. Then he turned and gave Izuku a stern look. "Additionally, you with the unkempt hair. You've been muttering this entire time. If you can't take this seriously, then leave. You're distracting the rest of us," he said. Angrily, Izuku said, "Gee, I didn't know planning in advance was distracting." Katsuki laughed at this comment, and Kagaya stuck her tongue out while Present Mike went on with his explanation without interruption. Later, Izuku stood at his test location wearing the exam attire he had selected after the written exam. This ensemble included white shorts, white arm warmers, and a navy blue, short-sleeved shirt with a high collar and the Uchiha emblem on the back. Along with his Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki crest bracelets on his left arm. He was wearing a pair of ninja sandals. He also has a shuriken bag attached to his right side and a kunai pouch strapped to his left. Finally, a tsurugi sword was fastened to his waist in a horizontal fashion. It was modeled after one made by Sasuke Uchiha. After taking a big breath, he reviewed all of the other candidates and was genuinely impressed. He had a lot of work ahead of him. He then decided to go and wish Ochako well after seeing her standing there getting dressed, but he stopped when someone touched his shoulder. The boy who called him out asked, "She seems to be attempting to get ready. Will you also divert her attention?" With a sidelong glance, Izuku unconsciously activated his Sharingan, causing the boy with the glasses to retreat. Those eyes, don't tell me that, he thought, startled. The girl with the green hair asked, "I was not going to distract her. I was simply going to wish her luck. Is that a problem?" The bespectacled teenager apologized, no, my mistake," before Izuku turned around and gave them a fleeting glimpse of his Sharingan eyes before he blinked and put them away. The other applicants noticed the boy's change in attitude and appeared perplexed by it. One of the candidates murmured, "Did you see that kid's eyes?" Another muttered back, "I think so. I didn't get a solid look." The other hopefuls muttered in surprise, "I swear I thought I saw the Sharingan for a sec." Izuku thought, "This does not look good," but Mike abruptly ordered them to begin, and he began to run. He made a hand sign and 5 clones materialized, using the body flicker jutsu to split up and cover more ground. "Okay, first up. Shadow clone jutsu," he cried. He then went to the main street, where he was met by a one-pointer. Izuku acted quickly, drawing his sword to cut off its head and continue. A blond boy wearing a peculiar-looking belt over to the side appeared disappointed at having been denied a point before leaving. "Okay. Now where to?" "Bingo!" the boy exclaimed, noticing a group of 2 points arranged in 2 lines along a side street. Using chakra, he jumped into the air, ran up a building, performed a backflip, and threw 5 shuriken down on them. He yelled, "Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu," as the 5 morphed into 10 and struck the bots in their vulnerable spots. He landed behind them, and one by one, they exploded. Before he resumed his hunt, he grinned at his creation. Somewhere else, Kaguya was in the middle of defeating the robots in her region at another testing location by utilizing her Byakugan and her own version of the Hyuga Gentle Fists technique. Ordinarily, using such a taijutsu on robots wouldn't work. However, since this was a totally different era, Kaguya came up with a workaround that would make the exam much simpler. Channel chakra into her hands to intensify her punches. Alternatively, shoot chakra with such force that it damages the inner workings of the robot. To be honest, it was up to the type of robot to choose what would function best. She destroyed 11 one-pointers, 6 two-pointers, and 5 three-pointers, bringing her total to a solid 38 points. As of right now, the data speaks for itself. Before noticing another group of one-pointers, she laughed and said, "If this is the entire test, then I think I'm good." "Huh? Easy pickings," she exclaimed with a smile as she hurried on, Byakugan coming on. Somewhere else, observation space, a female voice said, "Well, this batch looks promising." On the screen, Kaguya was seen dodging the robots with backflips and wild gymnastics before hurling shuriken at them while aiming with her Byakugan, or making them explode outwards with her soft hands. On another, Bakugo used his peculiarity to beat the living daylights out of robots up close, and his clay-coated Kamui shuriken was used to blast them at a distance. As he concentrated on Izuku, Kaguya, and Katsuki because of their chakra powers and Kekkei Genkai, an intelligent voice said, "Indeed, and don't call me a favoritist when I say that 2 in particular are already standing out from the rest." This was because, as he was saying this, Izuku's shadow clones were using fire, wood, water, and lightning release methods to beat robots left and right. Meanwhile, the 5th was only using kunai, and the original Izuku was tracking his victims with his newly evolved Sharingan before hitting them. As he observed Izuku's development, a male voice with a Western accent said, "I can see what you mean. Are those abilities really what I think they are?" Another voice continued, "Real-life ninjas like in the days of old, this should be interesting." Somewhere else, at the same time, he was sailing through the air with Katsuki, who was being pursued by a very powerful three-pointer. It was quickly apparent that the boy was chewing on something as he skidded to the ground and dug his palms into the pavement. When he spat it out, it turned out to be clay, even though one would have assumed it was gum, specifically, exploding clay. After shaping it with his hands, he let it fly and let it transform into a clay dragon, which began to spit clay blasting out its mouth. The clay construct started firing at the three-pointer right away, attempting and failing to swat it out of the air as blasts struck different parts of its chassis, including its servos. Katsuki laughed as the dragon landed on his arm just as the ground began to tremble, saying, "Hee, nice job, little guy." Applicants began to flee from something as he glanced around to see what was going on. Before a shadow passed over him and he looked up, his eyes widening as he gazed at the enormous zero-pointer, he wondered what the deal was. Well shit, he mumbled, relieved that there was a challenge of some sort. Somewhere else. When it failed to punch her, the girl hit Kaguya with a three-pointer, forcing its metal to expand and burst from the inside. She grinned and said, "On to the next one." Then she began to shake and other applicants began to run away in fear, casting a shadow over her. As a result, she looked up to find the zero-pointer towering over the testing area's buildings. She laughed and smiled malevolently as she prepared to strike, saying, "Ah, just what I need. A fresh practice dummy." But before she could use her Byakugan to try to hit the robot and make it fall like a set of dominoes, she noticed that it was going to crush another applicant. The applicant, a little boy with purple hair, apparently made the stupid error of throwing these balls at the robot's tracks, which caused them to become lodged and caused the robot to lose its equilibrium and begin to topple over. He exclaimed in genuinely pathetic fear, "No, I'm too handsome to die. I still don't have a girlfriend." Kaguya thought, "Handsome is the last word I'd use to describe you," and then she shook her head. She let out a sigh and hurried in, saying, "I guess I'd better save that pipsqueak." Somewhere else, Izuku, meantime, had just unleashed his shadow clones to regain his chakra and earned 60 hero points when the zero marker in his region appeared. He heard something that drew his attention just as he was ready to run. "Ah! Someone help! I'm stuck!" A voice that sounded familiar said. When Izuku noticed Ochako pinned beneath some debris, his head twisted and his eyes widened in horror. "Crap," he said as the robot's treads began to approach her. He swiftly used his Sharingan to free her leg using Earth Method, then began to make hand signals as she began to crawl away. With a clap of his hands, he said, "Wood style. Wood golem jutsu." As soon as the ground started to tremble violently, a huge wooden statue of a demon with a dragon wrapped around its torso sprang out from the ground, causing the other applicants to hold onto something to prevent them from toppling over. As the golem and robot looked at one another, the mechanical horror sprang onto its shoulder with his chakra and attempted to punch it, but the golem ducked. As a result, the wood dragon was able to separate and snake-like wrap around the bot. Somewhere else, at the same time, the judges in the observation room were suddenly tense. As the female voice from earlier said, "Holy crap, this is actually happening. We found a Senju," with joy. The informed voice remarked, "I believe that's the same boy from before, he must be from both families. That's the first I've seen of a wood-style move. Only ever read about it in books. No wonder Hashirama Senju was such a legendary figure." A more profound voice said. A seductive voice pondered, "And that girl there?" She pointed to Kaguya, who was running off with the child she had saved, and said, "Doesn't she remind you of someone?" The other educators nodded in agreement. As a matter of fact, she does. Somewhere else, she put her rescued victim down and quickly sprang back into the battle with Kaguya, determined to prevent the robot from destroying everything. She found a weak spot on the faceplate with her Byakugan that would enable her to put a stop to this as soon as possible. The robot exploded forth from the side and began to descend in a different direction as she yelled, "Here we go, gentle fist offensive," and struck the weak spot. When it hit the ground, it broke apart due to a succession of smaller explosions, leaving the area covered in rubble. The others stared at her in wonder at this show of strength. One of them said, "Did you see what she did?" Another person said, "Yeah, I did. It was out of this world," with surprise. A third, much more shocked, exclaimed, "Wait a fucking minute, she looks like Kaguya Otsutsuki." The shorty Kaguya saved hurried up to her and begged, "Please be my girlfriend." To his dismay, the white-A deadpanned in response, "No, I'm off the market." She kicked him out of the way and walked away, saying, "Now, get out of my way." Somewhere else, he realized he had to annihilate this thing back with Izuku before it could escape his wood dragon's hold, so he fused his right hand with his golem's right shoulder and began channeling one for all from his arm into the golem's, causing its arm to flash crimson. Izuku yelled, "One jutsu quirk combo, ready to serve, SMASH," as the golem's arm swung toward the robot, leaving the space behind it completely destroyed by the shockwave. But the golem's arm was blown to splinters in this attack, and Izuku's right arm was entirely destroyed by the backlash, which also caused the wooden structure he was standing on to begin to collapse. Whoa, I should have planned for this. I wish I had more foresight, he thought. He ought to have anticipated a strong pushback. He shook his head. That was something else to think about. He had to figure out a safe landing. He quickly made a strong sling for his arm using wood style, and then he began to consider landing techniques, but he was unable to carry them out when he was struck across the face by a hand and began to float. Ochako was the one. Once more, she came to his rescue. When she let go of her grip and began to throw up, he looked at her in disbelief. He got up and went to one of his first pals in Ua as his legs were still in one piece. He asked her, internally slapping himself for such a stupid question, "You okay?" He winced as he helped her down, and she nodded, "Yeah, just a little nauseous." With anguish, she added, "I think I broke my ankle." Izuku considered giving her one of his mending tablets after examining her leg, but he decided against it because he was unsure about her blood type. He utilized his medical ninjutsu and a one-handed hand sign to tell her, "Here, let me try and help." As he placed his hand on her ankle and peered at it with his Sharingan, he intoned, "Healing art. Senju recovery jutsu." His palm was glowing green. Ochako felt her ankle heal and gazed at him in wonder. When it was over, she felt perfectly well and got to her feet. She exhaled, "You're a true ninja, I can't believe it." Izuku informed her, "Well, it's true. You saw that from the golem." Panting heavily, he deactivated his Sharingan and fell on his ass. He moaned, "And there goes the last of my chakra." Meanwhile, the other participants looked at Izuku in amazement and disbelief. The statement, "I can't believe it. That kid's a Senju," was made by one amazed person. "No, that can't be right, didn't you see his eyes? He's obviously a Uchiha," another person responded. A third applicant asked, "Hold on, didn't those two families die out over a century ago? This guy must be from both families," a fourth said, realizing that it didn't imply they left no descendants behind. The earlier bespectacled child, meanwhile, was in disbelief. "The flow of Senju and Uchiha blood within him is amazing," he thought in amazement before another thought came to him. However, why now? Why is a chakra user finally coming to the fore? "I'm confused," he thought. When the exam was over, a short, elderly woman approached them and commended them everyone on their hard work. She saw Izuku's arm in its wooden box cast when she arrived. Because to his Hashirama level regeneration, it had already begun to mend. My, you got this hurt from your own quirk, sonny?" she responded. Izuku lied, keeping one for all a secret, saying, "Chalk it up to me being a late bloomer. Not much of a surprise. I'd heal myself, but unfortunately I'm out of chakra," he said to her. When she heard that, the woman hummed, "Hum." The woman's lips stretched out and kissed his arm, allowing it to heal in a matter of seconds. "Oh, I see. Here, let me help with that." Izuku was astonished, but then he felt a little worn out. He moaned, "Oh geez," when he finally recognized her, he said, "Thanks, recovery girl." As she continued to tend to the other children, she nodded and said, "Why, you're most certainly welcome." Ochako's eyes lingered on Izuku for an unknown reason, yet she looked drawn to him for some reason. Somewhere else, Katsuki is back. With a huge, insane smile on his face, he screamed, "Die, you fucking scrap heaps," as he rode about on his clay dragon, which blasted all of the smaller bots while everyone else frantically fled from the zero-pointer. Yes, he was most likely the least dangerous of all. Later, Kagaya saw Ochako going somewhere else as she prepared to go for home. She decided to follow her after wondering what was going on. She continued doing this for a few minutes until the girl got to present mic, at which point the white-haired girl ducked behind a wall to hear what they were saying. The brunette said, drawing the sound hero's attention, excuse me. "Oh, need something, little listener?" he inquired. "I was hoping I could talk to you about one of the boys who was testing with me," the brunette said. She went on, "It's the one with all the freckles and the curly hair." The hero explained, "The Uchiha Senju kid?" Nodding, Ochako said, "Yeah, him. Is it possible for me to give him some of my points? I feel like I made his waste a perfect opportunity to get more points to pass, and I want to make it up to him," she went on. When Kagaya heard this, she grinned off to the side. She was happy to hear that her boyfriend had motivated everyone around him. Present Mike patted her head and reassured her, "Oh, don't worry your head, kiddo. He's just fine as he is." Sighing, the girl said, "Oh, that's a relief." She was finally able to leave the school as a result, but she couldn't get rid of the sensation that someone was following her. She was at her breaking point as she got closer to the college entrance. She whirled around and said, "Okay, whoever's following me, Get out here already. She gasped when she regained her composure, however, and beheld the porcelain unearthly voluptuous vixen that was Kaguya staring down at her after someone shoved her into the wall as soon as she turned around. She started, I saw you heading to present Mike. Basically everyone's already left, so I got pretty curious about what was going on. Imagine my satisfaction when I find out that you wanted to help my boyfriend. She went on. She asked, tell me, what exactly made you want to do that? I don't know, I felt interested in him when he saved me. Plus he helped me, why shouldn't I have helped him? Ochako said. As she let her go, Kaguya laughed and said, hey. Fair enough, but if I know my boyfriend, he's gotten more than he needs to get into the hero course. He's definitely fine, she said. Well, you've certainly known him way longer than I have, so I'll take your word for it, Ochako sighed. She gave Kaguya a very threatening look over her shoulder after she said, as long as we understand each other, I won't hold your interest in Izuku against you. But if you try to steal him from me, I won't hesitate to cut out the problem at its source. Understand? She issued a warning. Submissively, the brunette squeaked, why yes, ma'am, to her new boss. Before leaving, the pale-skinned girl gave a satisfied nod and said, good. Later, with a sigh, Kaguya gave Izuku a tight hug as they made their way home. The boy asked, well, now that the exams are over, what would you like to do next? We can spend the week at either of our places while we wait for results to come in, Kaguya said. Okay, and what do you propose we do while we wait? Izuku responded. The white smiled and said, I can think of a few things. Plus, it has been a while since you last played shogi with my father. I'm sure he'd like to have a few games while we wait, she said. Sure, we can stay at your place. The teen with the viridian hair grinned. I could use that stimulus after all this time. With his gaze shifting to her, he asked, why'd I get the feeling that you're just trying to get me cornered in your room so you can have your way with me? Innocently, the girl asked, whatever do you mean? The Sharingan boy said coldly, because that's exactly what you did last time. He blushed as his girlfriend giggled and said, you liked it though. He complained when he saw pictures of his naked lover. Shut up, he said. Later, after having to refrain for so long, Kaguya groaned as she and Izuku began making out as soon as they got to the girl's house. They couldn't help but get at one another. In reality, the previous events were merely foreplay. Finally, we can truly consummate our relationship. No foreplay, no anything else. Kaguya sighed. Gazing directly into her boyfriend's eyes, she exhaled, just you making me your woman, your personal goddess. Izuku asked, won't your parents hear us? She drew him into the house and said, why do you think I suggested we stay here? They're out of town for the week. As he began to undress, Izuku exhaled, you sly little minx. Kaguya followed suit. After finishing, they both took in each other's looks. Izuku's beefiness during the past 10 months was rather clear to Kaguya. He had nice, compact muscles that were ideal for shinobi work and, in her opinion, grinding meat. It was evident to Izuku that Kaguya had somehow become more voluptuous than she had before been. She was more attractive overall, yet she was still as slender and agile as before. He had no idea that was even possible. He gasped, still recalling the first time he had a clear view of her ass and breasts, when she had squeezed him dry with them months before. You're beautiful. With her cheeks heated with arousal, Kaguya chewed her fingernails and moaned, and you've gotten bigger. Well, you have 6 options for where we can do this first, he said. 1. Here in the hall. 2. In the living room on the couch. 3. On the kitchen counter. 4. In the bathroom. 5. In my bedroom, she started off. Izuku questioned, what's number 6? And his sweetheart gave him a cunning, almost energizing smile that extended across her red lipstick-painted face. She responded, pointing up to the room with the 6th finger, my parents' bedroom. Images of all the things he could do in the different locations flashed through Izuku's head as he analyzed his options and thought about where to rail his lover. Then he took her to the master bedroom and tossed her on the bed, making her squeal with delight. As he climbed into bed with her, the Viridian Uchiha descendant said, I want us to spend this week practicing on how to be husband and wife. He went on, starting with this. Then he held up a silver ring that was adorned with rubies, which are the birthstones of Kaguya and Izuku, and had a stunning opal pearl as its focal point. Kaguya said, wait, are you actually using this to propose to me so early? With a startled and somewhat hopeful exclamation. With their faces inches apart, Izuku simply bent down to take her hand. As I recall, I believe I already made it clear that I intended to marry you, he stated, So yes, I am proposing to you. Your answer? He inquired. The girl nodded and began to cry, allowing him to put the ring on her finger. She said to him, yes. Then she kissed him once more. Yes. Yes. 1,000 times, yes, she said. Kaguya won the tongue battle and was on top of him, ready to ride him like a cowgirl, after they made out passionately and fought for supremacy. Are you ready for your goddess to take your virginity, my dear husband? She was purring. He replied, don't act so smug, I'll also be taking yours as well, my darling wife. Then he flipped her over and impaled her on himself. As she groaned, he purred, you're mine now, Kaguya Usagi. Mine now and forever. As he took her, all she could say was, yes. After that, they practiced being married for a week. After a week, Izuku returned to his home at last. He was eating supper with his mother right now, and he was feeling really good. He had at least earned 60 points on the test, so he would undoubtedly pass. However, he couldn't get rid of the impression that his mother was upset with him. Because she inherited the boy's Senju and Uzumaki DNA, Inko Midoriya was a stunning woman for someone who was almost 30 years old. Her beauty and figure even matched Tsunade's in her earlier years. The reason for this is that as he was eating his dinner, the gaze she was giving him was piercing his brain. She started, you stayed at Kaguya's house, she went on, for a week, doing the deed. He almost choked on the final part. He exclaimed, I don't even remember mentioning that. He asked, how did you know? With his gaze still intact, Inko said to him, because you have a look in your eyes that says you did something with your girlfriend with no regrets. I should know. I had it after I gave my virginity to your father, she continued. Then Izuku moaned, Mom, okay, yeah. I gave Kaguya my virginity and took hers in return. But it was one of her safe weeks, it's not like we did this without thinking, he stated. Inko asked deadpan, in Shinobu and Yojimbo's bedroom? How? Izuku exclaimed, his face displaying a stunned expression. Inko shrugged, viewing his response with some amusement. Me and Hisashi actually did that with your grandparents' bedroom on my side. She thought absently, I suppose it must be a Midoriya family fetish. With a groan, Izuku tensed. Don't even, he said, wait. And then turned to face his mother. Dad didn't propose to you right before he took your virginity, did he? He asked. No, but he did do it the next morning. Why? The woman responded, arching her shoulders. With a smug expression on his face, the kid stated sarcastically, other than feeling smug in one-upping you and Dad since I proposed to Kaguya before we went at it? Impishly, he continued, nothing. Izuku's eyes widened in comedic panic as Inko held up a slipper, a tick mark appearing on her forehead. As she lunged across the table, her kid ducked the attempted attack, and she said, come here, you cheeky little brat. Izuku yelled, yikes, as he walked himself into the wall. He jumped around the apartment to avoid her punches, and Inko, of course, tried to swat at him. Later, a few hours later, Inko burst in with a letter from UA, which Izuku hastily carried to his room. He discovered something he had not been aware of when he opened the envelope and saw a sheet of paper with his scores on it. He had 60 hero points and 60 rescue points. It put him in 4th position on the test. The only problem was that he didn't know what those were. Then a projection materialized and a disc landed on his desk. To the boy's astonishment, All Might said, Booyah, I am here as a projection, as he emerged wearing a yellow outfit. What the? All Might. But, this is from Ua. Unless, the ninja realized what was happening and began to gasp as All Might began to explain. Now as you may have already surmised, you had something on your score besides hero points. These are rescue points, given to you by judges based on heroic acts. After all, a dedication to saving others is what makes a hero. He said. And with those numbers you have passed the exam and have been accepted. He went on. All Might grinned and held out his hand, saying, Welcome, Izuku Midoriya, successor of the clans of old, to the Hero Academia. Izuku gave a giddy smile. He had succeeded, he was accepted. His mother spotted that enormous smile as soon as he ran out of his room, and the two of them laughed with joy. The moment had come to become a hero, somewhere else. Kaguya exhaled as she opened her letter and saw that she received a perfect score of 100, which included 50 hero points and 50 rescue points. Although the score was unquestionably passing, she was more worried about her recently engaged partner. When her phone rang and she looked to find a text from Izuku, she was startled out of her reverie. I succeeded. A total of 120 points, he informed her. Kachan received 130. It seems that he received more robots as everyone was running, he continued. Kagaya replied to the SMS with a smile. Looks like the three of us are getting into the hero course. Yes. Excited. Izuku gave a nod. Well, did your folks ever learn? Regarding our actions? He asked. Indeed, they did. With a slight sigh, the girl answered. They saw the ring and figured out what happened. Since we cleaned up after ourselves, they were at least less upset about it, she said. Izuku moaned. Aw shit. Here we go again. Didn't Inko also find out? Kagaya broke out in a sweat. The teen with the viridian hair responded. Yeah, and I got a little too smug about one-upping her and dad, which made her chase me around with a slipper. Oh dear lord. Kagaya exclaimed, attempting to stay upright. She controlled her laughing and then responded once again. We can say that all three of us enrolled in UA's hero course, at least. Honey, I'll see you on the first day. Kiss emoji, the girl responded to the text. The boy cautioned her, watch it unless you want me to manhandle you into next week the next time I see you. Like the time you abused me in the restroom of my home? Kagaya shot back. I'm counting on that, she continued. Consider multiplying that by 10. He informed her, because I'll be using 10 shadow clones on you. Kagaya shivered in delight at this, already seeing herself being dragged by numerous Izukus in every hole, possibly several at once. It was a breathtaking picture. Resigned to what he would probably do to her, she informed him, I look forward to it, my husband. Izuku said, I wonder sometimes if you have a kink for this sort of thing. In any case, I'm off to bed. We're in for some really serious times. Good night, sweetheart, he went on. Good night, sweetheart. As she placed her phone down, Kagaya cooed, I look forward to the day when we can finally share a bed together more permanently. Her palm then moved to her tummy, conjuring up a vision in her mind of it being big and developing with a kid inside. She wished time would pass more quickly so she could reach that stage of her life, at which she might become a mother. As the teachers examined the exam results, Snipe said, the kids this year sure look promising. Looking at Katsuki's video, Midnight remarked, yeah. The first place kid took out the rest of the villains while everyone else was panicking. After watching Kaguya's performance, All Might remarked, the second place kid isn't someone to sneeze at. She took out the zero-pointer with one well-placed palm strike. And then there's the third place kid. He's another to look out for, that's for sure, said Powerloader. I mean, the Sharingan and Wood style are amazing enough, but apparently he can use advanced healing. That's rare, he said. Nezu nodded in agreement, saying, yes, having him as a hero will be a godsend for us and every other hero in the field. Darkly, All Might observed, and also put a serious target on his back. He went on, the girl too. Yes, with beauty like hers I can see many people, villains or otherwise, wanting to use her for the purpose of bearing powerful offspring. Midnight sighed. The others nodded as Snipe said, we better make sure they're both ready, then. Another person, off to the side, gave Izuku and Kagaya a critical glance. Although he wasn't really sure how to interpret them, he did concur with Midnight's assessment of Kagaya. Somewhere else, with her ring sparkling on her finger, Kagaya sighed contentedly as she collapsed back on her bed, her heart racing as she thought back to her and Izuku's rehearsal honeymoon. Oh, how I love that man, she sighed adoringly, concluding that calling Izuku a simple boy was a term that was way too tiny for him, especially considering how he had turned her into a woman that week. You could tell she was thrilled even if she couldn't express it as they prepared to enter UA together. She thought as she drifted off to sleep, I wonder who we'll meet somewhere else. In the meantime, All Might eventually reconnected with Izuku. The man grinned and offered his student a high five, saying, congrats on getting in. Izuku grinned and said, it was no picnic, but damn was it worth it. He laughed and said, I also found out Kagaya got in, too. That's the best info ever, really. I'll be sure to tell Principal Nezu about your relationship, so you guys won't get pestered about it, he was told by the blonde. Izuku nodded appreciatively, saying, that would be appreciated, thank you. Now, how was the initial experience of using one for all? The man inquired. The boy's honest response was, like a lot of broken bones. No, the rush is what I mean, how did that feel? His instructor asked. After giving it some thought, Izuku remarked, like a lithium battery exploding after getting exposed to water. That's quite detailed. Have you tried testing that? He asked. The teenager shivered, remembering how the battery in question did, in fact, explode. He had conducted an experiment 2 years prior to see if it was true, and he discovered the hard way that it was when the cup it was dropped into exploded nearly like a grenade. Yes, and that was the dumbest thing I've ever done. He pledged to carry that tidbit to the grave with him, but Kagaya discovered that he had actually soiled himself out of astonishment. As the top hero put it, I think it would be best if you tested what would be your safest limit before using it again. I agree. The Viridian-haired Uchiha nodded in agreement, saying, but it is really gonna take a while. But it is a terrible idea to find out in the heat of battle. All Might thought, leaning forward to meet Izuku's gaze. All Might? Why do you have that look on your face? The boy inquired. The man pondered, something seems different about you. What are you discussing? As his mentor proceeded to examine him, the teenage shinobi inquired. How far along are you and young Usagi in your relationship? Did he ask? Izuku blushed as he said, and I proposed to her before we even started that. The number one hero's mouth fell open in disbelief. We had a rehearsal honeymoon. Over the week we waited for the results to show up for each of us. Did you at least wear protection? That's not what I was expecting, he thought. Did he ask? The lad let out a deflating sigh and said, I don't think she'd want to use protection even if it wasn't, but it was her safe week. Do you have complete confidence that she isn't a rabbit or something? Toshinori had to ask while perspiring. Honestly, that wouldn't surprise me in the slightest. Izuku exhaled. Her parents do have rabbit quirks, after all, he thought. That should suffice, wouldn't it? Anyway, you are right about the journey to mastering one for all being a long one, but once you get a grip on it, the hero shrugged, before trailing off, picking up a can and becoming buff. It's yours to command, he said. He crushed the can as he finished. The shinobi nodded and said, I'll take your word for it. Later, Izuku let out a sigh and, on his way to school the following morning, he couldn't help but remember what All Might had said. How long would they be able to survive before they ended up having sex on school property if Kagaya was as rabbit-like as her parents? Even school restrictions might not be enough to stop her. In fact, they might even inspire her, he thought, shivering. As he kept thinking about this, he soon arrived at the school and heard a flurry of wolf whistles and catcalls from different pupils directed at a person coming through the front gates. He grinned as he made his way through the throng and saw his cherished fiancée or girlfriend waiting for him. She had a man, and he was the only man who could satisfy her, so Kagaya could only roll her eyes at all the attention she was receiving. She had no interest in any of these peons. However, as soon as she spotted Izuku, her eyes glowed like a Christmas tree. Izuku. The girl cried happily as she ran to him and jumped into his arms. Oh my lover. How much I missed you is beyond your comprehension. She groaned and gave him a hard hug. Don't worry, Izuku laughed as he gave her a hug in return, pointedly ignoring the envious glances and murmurs of, that lucky bastard. We're never apart for that long, sweetie. Kagaya murmured, but it isn't right. She told her husband that a wife shouldn't be absent from him for an extended period of time. But enough of that, the youngster murmured, that is true. As he entered the main building, his boyfriend clung to him the entire time. Let's get to class, he added. Somewhat later, fortunately, the pair shared a class, and they were now on their way to it. All right, 1A, 1A. Where is it? As he glanced at his itinerary, the Viridian-haired Uchiha said. His lover informed him, it's right there. What? The young man blinked before looking up at a massive door. How likely is it that this door was designed for tall people? He deadpanned. Kagaya deadpanned in response, pretty high, really. Well, time to get a good look at the class. She pondered as she entered the door and was met by. Get up and leave that desk right now. Izuku heard a familiar voice exclaim. What? I take it you're fooling me. As the two walked into the room, Katsuki snorted. Just our luck, moaned the two. You moron, I won't allow you to destroy the desks by using them as footrests. Many heroes sat at those desks. The teenager with the blue hair let out a frustrated cry. Did you get a stick up your ass from your previous school? Or did you have it from birth? The blonde shot back. What? Let's start over, the teenager said, gasping before he caught himself. He went on, my name is Tenya Iida, and I attend the Sumei Private Academy. Sumei, E.H. You must believe that you are superior to me, the blonde chuckled and said, I'll have fun ripping you a new one, he went on. Putting a classmate in danger? Are you certain that you are in the correct class? Iida let out a gasp. The entire class turned to see Kagaya and Izuku as she informed him, trust us, he's sure. Before approaching the Uchiha, the bespectacled teenager exclaimed, it's him. The lilac-eyed girl kissed Izuku's cheek and purred into his ear, saying, "Seems they have their eyes on you, my dear." Izuku laughed and said, "I can tell. I'll go right to the point because I'm sure you heard me say my name." Iida bowed slightly and added, "I would want to apologize for my past rudeness toward you. You must have observed something during the practical exam that I didn't, and thus you are a superior student," he went on. "Better? Not very likely." Izuku shrugged and said, "But it would go a long way if you learned to pay heed to what others may be thinking in the future. I just did what I had to do." As someone approached from behind, Kaguya nodded, "Got that right. Hey, I recognize those hairstyles." The two turned around as a voice grinned. "Ochako." The white-skinned girl gave her companion a firm hug while cheering. Katsuki laughed and said, "Leave it to Kaguya to get ahead of everyone in making friends." "Oh, I'm so happy that our classes are together." Squeezing her friend's body, the girl grinned. "It's unbelievable that you and Izuku are also present. This is fantastic." Through the embrace, Ochako squeaked out. From behind them came a voice that said, "If you're just here to make friends, then you can pack up and leave now." With the exception of Kaguya, who wasn't impressed, the teenagers were a little uneasy when they noticed a weary-looking man wearing a yellow sleeping bag. "Why is an irate caterpillar reprimanding us? Do you even own a mirror?" she said. "You don't appear to want to be here at all," she continued, placing her hands on her sultry hips. PFFFFFFT. Katsuki and Izuku snorted with laughter. "Hello everyone," the man said, grunting as he emerged from his sleeping bag and made his way to the front of the class. "Just shut up and take your seat. Your teacher is me, Shota Aizawa," he said. "He's our teacher," thought the class without Kaguya and Izuku. Izuku thought coldly, "Well, this is going to be annoying." As bluntly as her lover, Kaguya thought, "Oh lovely, a tired hobo caterpillar is our teacher." As he took some tracksuits out of his sleeping bag, the man remarked, "All right, put these on and go outside." At that point, the pupils mentally completed the math equation meme. "Are you referring to a sleeping bag of holdings?" "What?" Katsuki asked. Kaguya responded with a shrug, "No idea, later." "Ooh, a track field. What? A test of oddity assessment?" Everyone asked the same question. "How about orientation, though?" Kaguya inquired. "Yes, it will be missed," Ochako continued. "Not significant. Tradition is not a constraint for us at UA. The Board of Education forbade the use of oddities to maintain equality, albeit this is not stated. We're going to be doing physical tests to see your possible potential as heroes," he remarked, adding that it's crazy and would not endure forever. Izuku remarked absently, That doesn't sound too bad." The fair-skinned beauty continued, "Yeah, could be fun too, we could try to one-up each other." "As in a contest?" "Sounds dangerous," Ochako said uneasily. "Avoid becoming overly at ease." The children gulped when their teacher stated, "If I don't like the results, I may just wind up getting rid of whoever's in worst place." "Let's begin," the man said, then turned to face Katsuki. "Bakugo, what was your farthest softball throw?" he asked, which made him consider it. "Somewhere around 67 meters, I think," he responded. "All right." Aizawa advised him to try his quirk again this time and to employ his explosion-style tactics to enhance his results if he so desired. "Every weapon in a logical hero's toolbox should be used at all times," he continued. The blonde said, "Sure." He took a glob of clay, chewed it, infused it with his chakra, spit it out, molded it around the ball, and wound it up. "I'll add a little heat and drop their jaws, then send them flying." He smiled before exploding the ball. "Die." Before making several hand gestures, he shouted, "C1 booster, explosion style." The ball landed significantly farther than it would have otherwise due to another explosion that sent it farther, he said. Then, using his screen, Aizawa demonstrated that he hurled the ball 1008.9 meters. Izuku nodded and said, "Well done, Kachan." He threw it more than a kilometer. "Whoa," a boy with yellow hair said, startled. As the testing started, Kaguya shrugged and said, "Naturally. Minus 50-meter dash." The first test was a 50-meter dash, and so far, everyone was scoring well. Ochako finished in 7.49 seconds, while Himiko finished in 4.09 seconds. Katsuki and Izuku were the final pair to compete, and the lad knew precisely how he wanted to approach this test. As he prepared, the Uchiha heir thought, "Time for the body flicker jutsu." 4.39 seconds. As Katsuki landed, the robot that was keeping track of their times said to him. He said boldly, "My powers have the most uses out of everyone in this school." Izuku made a hand motion and groaned. Body flicker jutsu. Ninja art. After saying that, he vanished in a flash of black lines and then reappeared at the finish line. A mere 0.0001 seconds. Nearly everyone, including their teacher, gasped in complete astonishment as the robot declared. What the fuck? A redhead shouted, expressing what everyone was thinking. So that's the D-rank body flicker technique, Momo said. Quite an impressive feat for such a low-ranked move, she said. Test of grip strength. As he held the device in his hand, Izuku channeled chakra into it and tried to boost his results by adding a tiny bit of one for all to the mixture. However, as he did, crack. Everyone stared at him in shock when he unintentionally crushed it, especially Kagaya and Ochako, who had just realized how much he must have been holding back when he had held them earlier. Kagaya said, "Nice to see all that training you put in wasn't a waste." Deku. Really? The child laughed uneasily as he sheepishly gave the malfunctioning gadget to Aizawa, while the Pomeranian bomber moaned in frustration. Long jumping while standing Tsuyu Asui, Katsuki, Kagaya, and Uraraka all achieved the highest jump scores for this test. Izuku chose to replicate his performance from the grip strength test by sending a small percentage of one for all. He estimated it was 5%. To his legs through his chakra points and sending chakra to his feet before taking off and sailing across the field without incident, surpassing Kaguya's score but falling short of Ochako and Katsuki. Aizawa watched him and observed that he was not using his Sharingan and that he was not employing any of his larger moves. Can't beat 'em all, he said knowingly. He also seems to be keeping that other move in control. Something isn't adding up. I'll need to ask him about it soon. What's he doing? Is he saving his strength for the other tests? The guy pondered. A logical strategy, but it's still flawed. He'd do better if he used his Sharingan. Continuous side steps. Izuku concluded that the only way to score well on this test was to use as much chakra as he could to do body flicker quickly, which was a risky move, but he succeeded in defeating everyone else in the challenge. The only person I know of from researching the ninja world that was able to use the body flicker like that was Shisui Uchiha. Is he as strong as him? Aizawa saw this in the meantime. Ball throw. It was Izuku's turn to take the ball throw test, and as he made his way to the circle, he considered his strategy. It's a risky play, but it's the best I got, he added as he wove in a few more hand signs. Wood style. Wood armor. The boy said as he wrapped his arm in a wooden cast or gauntlet of some kind. I could make a wood release cast around my arm to absorb the backlash, and then my body will naturally heal quickly before the rest of the tests are done. What is he doing? Ochako pondered. Iida frowned and said, I'm not quite sure. He threw the ball in his hand, took a minute to prepare, then channeled all of one for all into his arm with a chakra boost, readying himself to toss the ball, but as he did, he felt his power abruptly drain away. What the fuck? What just took place? He thought, wondering about why one for all left him suddenly. Then he slowly turned around and the truth hit him. Aizawa was the hero he had based his ocular trickery on to attempt and pull others into his genjutsu. Eraserhead. Oh no, he muttered in a disappointed voice. Red-eyed, he told the youngster, I erased your irrational quirk. Someone like you shouldn't have been accepted here, regardless of your heritage. He went on to say this harshly. Eraserhead, just why would that be? With his Sharingan activating as they established eye contact, the youngster asked the man, and a moment later, the man grabbed him and drew him to him with his scarf. The entire force of your power is beyond your control. The hero said, that's my reasoning. Before Izuku abruptly vanished and was replaced by one of the softballs, he said, you can use it in small bursts but that will only amount to a stopgap. Run out of chakra to keep your techniques running, and you'll be a liability because you'll have to rely on a quirk you can't fully use. And, Sensei, I believed you completed your homework. He called the man's attention to his status and stated, you should be aware of the one rule pertaining to my bloodline. And that's, he looked the teenager in the eyes and trailed off, realizing his grave error. In response, he put his teacher in a genjutsu and said, don't look an active Sharingan user in the eyes. Suddenly, Aizawa was in a space of green and black lines, staring at a silhouette of Izuku before it erupted into pink flames and began to grow, forming a rib cage and other bones before skin and light armor appeared. The figure's white eyes seemed to stare him down as it towered over him. The figure resembled a new Susanoo variety, but it was entirely composed of chakra and wore spiked samurai armor, making it resemble the wood golem. The enormous illusion stared Aizawa down for a minute or two before reaching out with its emerald-hued right hand and grabbing the man as he stood there, terrified and motionless, then lifting him up to its face and staring at him. The man thought in disbelief, This is a genjutsu. And I fell for it, as the Susanoo avatar's mouth opened and abruptly swallowed him whole, turning everything black. His quirk's impact on Izuku vanished when the genjutsu ended, as he blinked afterward, and he screamed in shock and fell backwards, causing the students to stare at him strangely. "Oh, are you alright, sensei?" The man got to his feet, breathing shakily, and Kagaya arched an eyebrow in question. In an attempt to relax, he responded, "I'm fine, I just made the mistake of looking an active Sharingan user in the eyes." At last, another person understands. Bakugo, who had personally encountered genjutsu previously, screamed as he flung his hands in the air. It was never enjoyable. As All Might looked on, Izuku made the decision to throw. He flexed his wooden cast and had an epiphany. He smiled and began throwing his ball using a chakra booster first, then channeled one for all into his finger at the last second, sending it flying into the air so much that it resembled Team Rocket when Pikachu sent them blasting off. Izuku turned to Aizawa and held up his arm as his wooden cast broke into splinters, revealing his miraculously undamaged hand in defiance to his teacher as he clenched it into a fist. Aizawa read his screen and saw that the ball was out of range, so it registered as infinity, the same as Ochako's score. "You still believe that I am a liability, sensei?" With an appropriately triumphant smile, he asked. This child. Izuku's achievement was not without costs, though, as he still had some bruises around his finger. This display of strength attracted Kaguya's attention and caused that sensation of want to resurface deep inside her loins. Aizawa replied with a startled smile. "So hot," she groaned in her head. "What the hell, young Midoriya? When did you go and get so cool?" All Might said in shock. "He channeled one for all at the last second?" "Whoa, that's great." As she and her friend destroyed the exam, Ochako celebrated. "His finger is still a little bruised. This time, he was hurt even though the wood took the brunt of the blow." Iida observed, "How strange." Katsuki, on the other hand, was completely stunned by what he had just witnessed, realizing that it had nothing to do with his Sharingan or ninja abilities. With wide eyes, he exclaimed, "What the hell was that? Aside from his Sharingan and ninja skills, he should be completely quirkless. There's no way he could have gotten one now. Something doesn't add up. I'm getting to the bottom of this, now," he thought as he began to storm towards his rival and friend, explosions going off in his hands. He began to stomp more forcefully and growled, "Deku, what the hell did you just do, you bastard?" He was on the verge of starting a full sprint when he asked. He didn't get very far, though, since Kagaya blocked his path, and before he could respond, she stared at him and put him in a headlock. The explosive girl gulped at how serious she sounded as she murmured, "If you threaten or try to hurt my fiancé again, I'll kill you." Her tone was menacingly cute. The rest of the exams proceeded with Izuku performing quite well, and then it was time for the results, which came as follows. Everyone was horrified by what had just happened as the girl allowed Bakugo to get back up. Yayorozu Momo Bakugo Katsuki Todoroki Shoto. Midoriya Izuku Usagi Kagaya Iida Tenya Uraraka Ochako. Tokiyami Fumikage Shoji Miyazo Ojiro Mashiro. Kirishima Eijiro Ishido Minakota Koji Sato Rikido. Asui Suyu Aoyama Yuga Siro Hanta Kaminari Denki. Jiro Kyoka Hagakuri Toru. Everyone was shocked when Aizawa told them, and I was lying, no one's going home. What? Except for Momo and Izuku, everyone said. I assumed so. Momo nodded in agreement as the green-haired adolescent stated, as a ninja, I learned to see through deception. I agree. I'm shocked that none of you figured it out. I suppose one of us ought to have spoken up, she remarked. The other children thought, yeah, y'all should have, as Bakugo turned to face Izuku. He asked himself, what is he hiding from me? What was that comment about Midoriya being your fiancé, Usagi, before I break up with you? With a raised eyebrow, Aizawa asked, making the other students in the class, aside from Izuku and Kagaya, of course, blink and turn to face the couple. The white-haired teenager grinned and flashed her engagement ring, saying, exactly what it implies. Hold on, what? With wide eyes, Katsuki exclaimed as soon as he saw the ring, and everyone else was astounded as well because it was practically unheard of for two students to get engaged so young. Izuku shrugged casually, we decided to get engaged during the week we waited for our exam results to show up. Are you certain that's a wise choice? Iida asked. Momo agreed, saying, yes, that seems rather rushed. It's not hurried. We know each other well, we trust each other with our lives, and we know what we want. Plus, training to be a hero isn't unlike training to serve in any given military, So we need to make every moment count before we even graduate, the lavender-eyed girl added. We have known each other since we were 4 years old. Aizawa blinked, recognizing that she had been spot on. That's very rational, actually. With a nod of approval, Momo said, well, we hope your lives are fulfilling. The other students in the class agreed in various ways. Well done, Midoriya, for dating someone like Usagi. It is the epitome of manliness. Izuku just laughed in response to Kirishima's grin as he put an arm around the Uchiha descendant's shoulder. All Might chose to approach him while Aizawa turned a corner in the meantime. Aizawa, that was a bad move, the peace symbol said. All-powerful. According to the erase hero, you were observing. A logical trick. The number 1 hero said, I read your file, and you expelled a whole class of freshmen last year. That's cute, but you're not exactly known for being lighthearted. You have no difficulty expelling pupils or anyone else you think is unworthy. The fact that you intended to send the last place home, he added, must indicate that you see young Midoriya's potential as much as I do, he smiled. I might or might not. Who can say? Either way, I learned that my quirk doesn't work on chakra and to never look an active Sharingan user in the eyes, the weary-looking guy said with a shrug. All Might nodded and said, a lesson learned the hard way I see. There's one thing though. Aizawa said. Kaguya Usagi, I have a feeling that she may be as sex-crazy as Mirko, he said. The hero groaned and said, I don't think even the rules are going to be enough to stop her after a while. You're not the only one with that suspicion. With a sigh, the erasure hero said, hormone pills might work, but I'm not sure. This is going to be a nightmare. Later, after being examined by Recovery Girl and given permission to depart without needing to be healed, Izuku began to yawn and walk home when school let out. Then he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned to discover it was Iida. Hey Iida, he said, sighing, man what a day. Hi, Midoriya. I take it you're going to the train station? He asked. You? The boy gave a nod. Bakugo was nowhere to be seen since he chose to keep his distance from Izuku in order to calm down. I must admit I did disapprove of Mr. Aizawa's teaching methods, the bespectacled boy said, nodding as they walked together. However, I respect the school's judgment because, after all, UA is the best program. Nevertheless, lying is blatantly unethical, he said, crossing his arms. It might be a secret lesson to help us recognize such bluffs, though. Izuku noted that something similar might be useful. The speedster hummed wisely, that would stand to reason. Hey! As she hurried up to them, Ochako screamed, wait up, folks, I'll be there. As a cloudy white blur swept past them and Tackle embraced her and Izuku, she said. Yahoo-hoo! As she gave her companions tight squeezes, Kaguya exclaimed, remember me, she grinned. It made the gravity girl laugh. I'd never forget about you, Kaguya. Izuku nodded and said, yeah you can join us. Iida went on, the more the merrier, as they say. Later, on the way to the boys' apartment, Izuku and Kaguya embraced one another in a passionate embrace when his mother was out of the house with the other parents of their neighborhood friend group. They could hear the sound of moaning. In my house first, and now your apartment. As they parted to catch their breath, Kaguya exhaled, you're getting creative. Where do you want us to have sex? He assured her, I've got plenty of options. The child purred as they entered the building. Do you want to bring this to Inko's room? As they entered the Sharingan user's apartment, the girl, who looked like a rabbit, smiled. As we did on our rehearsal honeymoon? Izuku grinned, picked her up, and carried her bridal gown into his mother's chamber before putting her down so they could undress. You know me so well. I am quite aroused after today's test. As the two tumbled onto the bed, Kaguya turned to face Izuku, her rear in the air like a bunny. I just want you to take me and manhandle me into next week, she said. You know, I suspected you were partially rabbit. Izuku laughed as he mounted his beloved and said, looks like I was right. He snarled as he nailed her and made her groan his name. I hope you're ready to live up to that assumption. All night long. After a few days, everyone was adjusting to their new curriculum a few days later at school, which featured core sessions in the mornings that included subjects including English, math, reading, art, science, social studies, and more. Lunch was served in the main cafeteria, where one of Japan's top chefs, Lunch Rush, prepared the reasonably priced meals. Hero Basic Training, the most crucial course in the Hero course, finally arrived in the afternoons. However, everyone observed something this morning at the homeroom for the newly acquainted class. For the past 3 days, Kaguya Usagi has been limping in a very strange way. Are you all right, Usagi? Kaminari asked, blinking a few times in concern. Kagaya exhaled. Oh, I'm absolutely radiant. But really, you guys don't have anything to worry about. My legs are just asleep at the moment. This was her correction. The reality is that after Izuku had spent the night before jackhammering her in his bed and then doing the same thing to her mouth this morning, she had just begun to feel her body again from the waist down. She still had some evidence on her face, in fact. So, there's no need to worry about what happened to your face, Jiro inquired. My face? Izuku came in, sat down, and yawned as the girl asked. Mina noted, it's hard to make out, but there is something on it. With a brief glance in the palm mirror, the girl saw that part of her fiancé's essence was remained on the side of her mouth. Oh. Kagaya blinked, then used a cloth she carried to wipe it off, her face flushed. That's nothing you need to worry about, she redirected. The other girls heard Mina mutter, okay, those two have gotta be banging. Given Jiro's personality, this made them blush, but Momo found it very scandalous that the class's engaged pair was so involved. Their teacher entered at that point. I'm here, entering the room as if they were regular people, All Might shouted as he walked inside the room. Whoa, All Might is here, Denki Kaminari cried out. He's actually going to teach here. This is going to be fantastic, Eijiro Kirishima went on. Isn't that his costume from the Silver Age? Sue inquired. Kagaya smiled and said, well, this will be entertaining. Welcome to the UA High's most significant class. Consider it Hero 101. What it takes to be a pro and to fight for what's right will be taught to you here, and this lesson won't hold back, the hero informed them. Holding up a card with the word, fight, on it, he added. Training for combat. Bakugo grinned visibly as he spoke. This is closer to it now, Kirishima grinned as she spoke. And looking nice is one of the most crucial aspects of becoming a hero. As he pushed a button and cases emerged from the wall, All Might yelled, put these on and meet me at Training Ground Beta. Later, Beta Training Ground as his pupils emerged from the tunnel, All Might smiled and said, you kids are the living example of the adage that clothing make the hero. From this day forward, you are heroes in training, he said, surveying the next generation. Now, shall we begin? All Might added. You guys are novices. Izuku approached the group wearing his hero costume, which was a variation of his entrance exam outfit that his mother had dyed different colors. It included an emerald green, short-sleeved shirt with a high collar, Uchiha's symbol on the back, white shorts with a green stripe on the seam, and green arm warmers. He also wore green ninja sandals and wore bracelets of the Uchiha, Senju, and Uzumaki crest on his left arm, and a green ninja headband with the man's symbol on it. Kagaya, on the other hand, was dressed in a black skin-tight suit with white lines down her legs and white commas on the mirroring sides, as well as a cleavage window. She was also wearing a white trench coat that resembled a kimono, with red trim around the collar, sleeves, and bottom. She finished the ensemble with gray fingerless gloves and white boots. Nice costume, Kagaya. Ochako smiled. She then turned around and looked at Izuku. Hey Deku. She examined him with a smile. After hearing Katsuki refer to the three-clan heir as Deku, the girl began calling him that as well. At first, she wasn't sure why, as the moniker meant useless, but she also pointed out that it might also indicate, you can do it, because having a will of fire was the main slogan of his background. This caused the boy to reevaluate the nickname. In addition, Himiko and Ochako thought the name was adorable and heroic, which altered the moniker's perception in Izuku's eyes. She flushed and continued, your costume is pretty good, too. I wasn't very specific with mine, and ended up with this skin-tight suit. However, is the cleavage window actually required? Momo asked, adding, it seems like such a vulgar addition. Waving her Shikuho staff in response, Kagaya said, I don't think you have any room to be talking. All Might, however, regarded his apprentice closely as he saw some resemblances between the boy's attire and his own appearance, especially the headband and the fact that it appeared to bear his emblem. You're quite clear, the man said as he covered his mouth, trying to hold in his laughter. As they all gathered around, he spoke again. Now that you're ready. Combat training should begin now, he said. This is where we took our tests, sir. Will we be engaging in urban combat once more? Izuku glanced at the boy's costume and saw that it resembled that of Ingenium the Turbo Hero. Iida spoke up. Izuku pondered absently, I wonder why that is. Not quite. All Might retorted, now, the majority of the fights you see on the news happen outside. I'm giving you 2 steps ahead. However, statistically speaking, encounters with the most heinous evildoers occur indoors. Consider backroom deals, home invasions, and secret underground lairs, he added. This exercise will involve 2-on-2 indoor combat because truly smart criminals operate in the shadows, he continued. Isn't that very sophisticated? Sue asked. On the battlefield, you have the ultimate experience. But keep in mind, you can't just punch a robot this time, All Might retorted. You're interacting with real individuals, he went on. Will you be choosing the winner, sir? Momo inquired. To what extent can we harm the opposing team? What? Katsuki asked. As in the previous instance, will we have to worry about someone getting expelled? Ochako inquired uneasily. Will you divide us up according to comparative skill or chance? Iida raised a hand and inquired. Is there a cap on the types of weaponry we can employ? As he studied one of his kunai blades, Izuku asked. This cape is really chic, isn't it? Aoyama asked, showing off his glittering cape. I have more to say. The issue is this. The villains have holed up with a nuclear payload inside one of these buildings, and the heroes must stop them, the burly man said, cutting everyone off as he produced a screenplay. Either catching the bad guys or getting the weapon back will allow the heroes to win. Similarly, if the villains capture the heroes or save their target, they win. It's essentially a setup for an action film. All right, Himiko shrugged. The peace symbol held up a box and stated, we'll be selecting teams by drawing lots because time is limited. This seems a bit random, doesn't it? Iida inquired. Not precisely. This is perhaps a reference to the fact that heroes occasionally have to immediately form alliances with people from other agencies, Izuku noted. Great point. All Might yelled, gesturing to Izuku. Let's draw now, as everyone drew their lots, he said. Groups Usagi and Midoriya Shoji and Todoroki. Yayorozu and Iida Uraraka and Bakugo Ishido and Aoyama. Sato and Koda Jiro and Kaminari Tokiyami and Asui. Ojiro and Hagakure Kirishima and Siro holding her fiancé, Kagaya murmured, fitting that the two of us would be a team. What makes me think that you could take this as a chance to retaliate against me for this morning? The lad looked down at the girl and pondered. Izuku knew everything he needed to know when his beloved only giggled mischievously without saying anything. Now, these guys will be the first to battle. He guys, All Might said as he held up a white A ball and a black D ball, forcing the two teams to look at one another. Team A will be the heroes. Team D will be the villains, the number one hero said, holding up a ball for A and D, indicating that it was Izuku and Kagaya versus Katsuki and Ochako. Izuku and Kagaya both moaned, oh no, as they realized they would have to battle their respective best pals. Later, Ochako and Katsuki were getting ready outside the building, and Kagaya and Izuku were doing the same. To help him relax, the young ninja was writing in his clan repair journal. The brunette chose to inquire after glancing at the book. When she asked, what's in that notebook? Her partner paused and turned to face her. Oh, I'm just taking notes on ways I can improve and rebuild the Uchiha, Senju and Uzumaki clans, Izuku clarified. She inquired, how do you plan to do that? The youngster timidly confessed, well, I did have a plan to take on multiple wives. But that was before I met you again in middle school, he clarified. The bunny girl became agitated and wondered who he had considered include, but she chose to put that off until later. The girl informed him, well, I'm glad that you ended up changing your mind. So am I, he returned the smile, somewhere else. Bakugo stood behind the phony rocket, arms folded, tapping his foot impatiently on the floor, while Ochako sat on a drum barrel on the 6th floor, swinging her legs. To his temporary teammate, he inquired, you think Deku really has a quirk? Bakugo became quite perplexed as the girl said, he could. There's also the possibility of him being a late bloomer, which would make sense, if I looked at his quirk correctly. He inquired, what do you mean? The brunette shivered as she added, if his quirk is a power stockpiling type like I think it is, then I think both of us know what would have happened if he got it when he was 4. She didn't want to remember that picture, so thank you very much. Bakugo was going to inquire about her meaning when he had a mental picture of Izuku's body blowing up. In fact, it was so gory that he shuddered. Okay, yeah, you win. Him being a late bloomer makes sense, he smiled. Ochako questioned, then why are you so mad about it? I'm not mad about him having a quirk, I'm mad about him not telling me. We've been best friends since we were kids, he told me everything back then. So, him keeping something like that from me just, Katsuki concluded by walking away. The Infinity Girl said, stings? By nodding, the boy said, something like that. Himiko stretched while lying on her back, letting out a sigh. Well, quirk or not, he is still one of the best guys I've ever met. And he's so sweet. Is it any wonder that he got a fiancé before the first day even began? she responded with disbelief. Then Bakugo said, touché. But those two always had the hots for each other, so that doesn't surprise me, he sighed. That's what I mean, it's good to have someone who can help you when you're in need of a hero. Ochako gave a wink. But that's made me wonder, who saves the heroes, when they need saving? She asked. She went on, that's who I want to be. The child grinned and said, you know what? I like the way you think. Think you can handle guarding the bomb? He inquired. The girl smiled as she pulled out what appeared to be a pink and black Captain America-style shield and cracked her knuckles, saying, oh, that'll be easy as pie. As the game started, she said, let's get to work. To avoid being caught off guard, Izuku and Kagaya cautiously made their way into the structure where their match was taking place, avoiding blind areas and hiding behind corners. With her Byakugan, which let her to see past barriers and call out any potential ambushers, the white-haired beauty was particularly adept at staying on the alert. Kagaya said, hey, watch that corner, as Katsuki sprang out of nowhere, almost striking the two with a huge right hook. Holding the girls in his arms and shielding them from the explosion attack, Izuku murmured, I got you. Katsuki asked, ready to fight, Deku? As the lad with the viridian hair put his fiancée down. As his Sharingan came to life, the child asked, do you have a death wish? He snarled and reached for his blunted Bakken, saying, attacking my fiancée, big mistake. The explosive boy sneered, is that supposed to scare me? Izuku yelled, yes it is, before turning to face his beloved. Sweetie, go look for the bomb. I'll handle Kachan, he said to her. Right. The girl said, nodding before sprinting forward. As he lunged at the youngster, the Pomeranian hissed, ballsy move, you think you can take me on your own? The boy ducked the blow and booted him in the side into the sidewall. Izuku swore, fire style, fireball jutsu, and directed his flames at the boy before him. The bomber yelled, oh fuck, as he managed to dodge the fire assault before it reached his location. A clay spider jumped out of Katsuki's gauntlet a few seconds later, attached itself to Izuku's shoulder, and then exploded on its own, sending the descendant of Uchiha hurtling through the walls behind him. The Sharingan lad slammed into the final wall, grunting, oof. He groaned and said, well, I'm gonna feel that later. Somewhere else, Kirishima snarled, aw sneak attack, Bakugo. What kind of a man pulls cheap crap like that? But Midoriya managed to keep himself and Usagi from getting hit, Zero said. Yes, and young Bakugo is thinking like a villain since they like to use sneak attacks. Young Midoriya also had the reflexes to avoid the attack whilst keeping his partner safe. Take note everyone. All Might stated to them. Somewhere else, Izuku stood up and said, okay, now I'm getting seriously pissed. With his hands clapping together, he exclaimed, wood style. Deep forest emergence. Then, when trees began to sprout inside the building, it began to tremble, and Katsuki had to fight to stay balanced while pieces of the floor were damaged. The explosion user yelled, damn it, and jumped back. The blonde looked around and cursed, cut off, shit. He would have to spend some time blasting his way through as he was unable to locate a way around. He was irritated since Kagaya would have plenty of time to finish her portion. As he began to tear through the branches, Katsuki moaned, this is not going our way. Izuku shouted out, sorry, as he hurried to get his lover back together. Somewhere else, in the meantime, in the observatory, Momo exclaimed in amazement, deep forest emergence, it's just as amazing as the stories said. Kaminari agreed and said, I don't think I'd want to get stuck in that mess. Zero hummed, yeah, seems like an easy way to get lost. Given that the blonde bomber would be delayed, Fumikage observed, the branches look very robust and sturdy, so Bakugo is going to be significantly delayed. Jiro nodded and said, good strategy, I'd say. Somewhere else, in the meanwhile, with Kagaya. As she crept into the room and noticed the brunette staring off into space, the lavender-eyed girl remarked, well, so Chaco isn't quite as alert as one should be when guarding something. Nobody claimed that guard duty was enjoyable, though. The brunette sighed and sat on top of the bomb, making it float. When Kagaya discovered what her buddy had done, she cursed. Okay, I'm bored. She simply made it more difficult for the Byakugan user to accomplish her goal, so she was in a difficult situation unless her lover appeared to assist her. The girl moaned, of all the times to not know while walking. Somewhere else, in the meanwhile, Izuku was just one floor away from reassembling with Kagaya to finish the match when he heard a sound coming from behind him. He turned to see Katsuki flying toward him with explosives, having caught up more quickly than he had anticipated. His gauntlets flashed red as the blonde landed across from him. He stood up, his body glistening with nitro sweat, and declared, "I'm all loaded up." Seeing what his explosive friend meant, the Uchiha descendant questioned bluntly, "You had the gauntlets designed to store up your sweat, didn't you?" As he readied his right gauntlet to fire, the red-eyed youngster smiled and said, "That's right. The more I save up, the stronger the blast," and blasting through those branches was a hefty workout. As he began to move his hand up to try to slip Katsuki into a genjutsu, Izuku asked, "And you think I'm just going to let you get me with such a blast?" It did work, and Katsuki was startled to see a murder of crows cawing loudly as they flew all about him. "What the get the fuck away from me!" he screamed in terror as he attempted to kill the fictitious corvids. Izuku knocked him unconscious in his current condition. The youngster sighed and resumed his journey towards Kagaya, saying, "That's better." However, a number of clay spiders concealed themselves in his costume and were invisible to him. Somewhere else. Back with Kagaya, she attempted to reach the fictitious bomb but struggled since Ochako had it flowed out of her grasp. Time was running out, so this annoyed the pale girl. Kagaya groaned as she attempted to pick up the girl with her staff. "Well, isn't this just perfect?" Ochako yelled down to her, "Sorry Kagaya." Izuku entered the room at about that moment. He said, "Okay, what's the situation?" The boy's fiancé retorted, "Ochako has the weapon out of reach. I can't get to it." After a long nod, Izuku said, "I'll see what I can do about it," before two recognizable spiders emerged from his collar. Then he said, "Son of a..." Boom. The smoke then covered him, and Kagaya coughed while using a wind palm to push it all away. She also noticed that Izuku was without a shirt, but he had some minor burns. Best thing to happen in this whole lesson. Ochako blushed slightly as she smiled gratefully. Even though she was aware that Izuku was already in a relationship, she was still a teenager and knew what a good-looking man looked like. Just as additional spiders began to emerge from every hiding spot, the boy snarled, "URG. Dang it Kachan," and they could hear footsteps and clapping approaching. Katsuki grinned as he entered the frame and said, "You forgot about the capture tape, Deku." He nodded and said, "But that was actually impressive. I thought you'd be taken down by that one." The Uchiha grumbled, "And now you have me surrounded," he whispered, "Well played." Ochako kept sitting atop the floating dummy bomb, wondering, "So, what happens now?" The blonde said, "Now we wait for the clock to run out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, just as the buzzer went off. Over the speakers, All Might yelled, "The villain team wins." "Well, this didn't go the way we planned." Kagaya sighed. Nodding, Izuku said, "Yeah." Later, looking over his students, All Might asked, "Can anyone guess why young Uraraka is the MVP of this match?" When Momo stood up, she said, "Sir, I can." Midoriya, Usagi and Bakugo didn't make many obvious mistakes, but they did slip up in not taking Uraraka's ability to keep the bomb out of reach. She went on. Kagaya sighed and said, "Due in small part to me forgetting to invest training time in wall walking. If I knew that one, the match would have been ours," she continued. "I would have done just that, had Kachan not jumped me." Izuku grinned. Uraraka, however, was able to stick to her role and kept the bomb out of reach for the whole match. Had things not gone the way they did, things would have been vastly different. Momo went on. "Let's not forget how Kachan had us pinned with all those boom spiders." Izuku gave a nod. "Yes, but that was a risky gambit given the hypothetical stakes. He took advantage of the fact that this was training. He didn't respect the spirit of the trial," Momo replied. The Pomeranian barked, "Piss off." All Might gave a stupid nod. That about sums it up." Later, as the next matches started, Izuku sighed and Kagaya leaned on him, listening to him nearly nod off. She let out an exhausted grunt, I want to take a nap. I'm interested in seeing what our classmates are capable of." The kid nodded. The Sharingan boy did watch, and he discovered that Shoto had enough power to freeze a whole building, while Shoji could imitate any portion of the body with his quirk. Jiro's earjacks allowed her to hear almost anything, and Momo could create anything she wanted as long as she understood its structure. And that was only the beginning. As the final combat was coming to an end, Kagaya muttered, "These fights are making me wet." Izuku said in a whisper, "When the day is over, we'll go to a love hotel." Meanwhile, Katsuki couldn't help but feel a little intimidated by what he witnessed. Izuku had been his lone rival in middle school, but now? He was no longer so certain. Later, Izuku was sitting in class taking notes when he didn't realize Katsuki had taken an early leave of absence. It was simple to become absorbed in his work. Kagaya was interested in the fact that she spotted multiple possible matchmaking opportunities during the lessons, so she didn't notice. Especially Jiro and Kaminari. I'm thinking of grabbing something to eat after class, wanna come with? What kind of stuff do you like? Asked Kaminari. Jiro answered, bao buns and barbecue. She said, what about you? The boy answered, oh, I'm always down for a burger. As Kagaya leaned forward, the earphone girl nodded and said, somehow that doesn't surprise me. The two jumped as the white-haired girl grinned and said, well, I happen to have a few coupons if you guys want some. A startled, you what? Yelled the blonde. Kagaya held up the slips and grinned, saying, coupons. I got some to a barbecue place. As he accepted the coupons, Kaminari smiled and said, seriously? Sweet. He grinned and said, huh? These are perfect. Hey, yeah. I've been wanting to get these exact coupons for a while, Jiro grinned. The pale girl grinned contentedly and said, glad I could be of assistance. Before he got up and made the decision to text Katsuki to find out where he was, Izuku couldn't help but smile at her antics. As he stood up with his luggage in hand, he typed, meet me at the usual place later, and sent the message to the blonde. Katsuki responded with a text, sure, I need someone to talk to anyway. Izuku beckoned Kagaya to follow him and typed back, see you there later tomorrow morning. I got something I need to take care of. She smiled and said, is it time? With a smile, Izuku affirmed, it is indeed time. As they headed to a love hotel, he inquired, any special requests before we get there? The girl answered, I want you to gangbang me with shadow clones. When they arrived at their destination and booked into a room, his fiancée shivered as the Sharingan user murmured into her ear, gladly. It was time to have a crazy time in bed, in the morning, Izuku's apartment. After his run-in with his fiancée, Izuku woke up with a moan as his eyes blinked wide. It was 6 in the morning when he looked at his clock to his right. He turned to see Kagaya smiling contentedly as he cuddled up to him under the blankets after hearing a drowsy hum on his left. The young man could feel her breasts pressing against him, which caused him to blush a little and smile. Unfortunately, he understood that eventually they would have to get up. Izuku yawned and gave his fiancée a gentle shake, saying, Kagaya, we need to get ready. The young woman buried her face in her lover's neck and yawned, 5 more years. The young man groaned as he shook her further and said, I want to sleep more too, but we have school to worry about. Kagaya awoke with a moan and glanced blearily at her boyfriend. With a yawn, she rose up and stretched, giving Izuku a glimpse of her rack. Did you have to wake me up? She asked, not that he cared. As he sat up and stretched, Izuku moaned, unfortunately, yes. He stood up and continued, we need to clean ourselves up, anyway. The white-haired girl groaned as she stood up, saying, I seem to recall that you're the one who caused me to get my body so dirty. Izuku joked, said the one who didn't complain one bit during that time. The young man spanked his lover as he walked to the restroom. Ah! Kagaya jumped a little and yelled in amazement. Then she glared playfully at her fiancé. As she set the water to a suitable temperature, she asked, do you really want to play this game? The shinobi grabbed her ass in response and said, keep up the prissy attitude and I might just beat you at it. Kagaya grinned and pulled her boyfriend into the shower, where they began making out passionately. Ooh, I'll show you, she exclaimed. Naturally, at this time, the two took care to cleanse both themselves and one another. Later, Izuku made the decision to meet Katsuki in their regular location, which would be easy to go to UA from with a couple justice, as there was still time before the first class. When he got there, the bomber was already waiting for him. Katsuki said, I didn't expect you for another half an hour. He asked bluntly, judging by the state of your clothes, you got freaky with Kagaya again? Izuku shrugged and said, yep, but then again, I can match her. As he arrived at the location, he asked, what is it you wanted to talk about? If you're asking to meet here, it must be important. This area of the Hokage compound, which now stood like a stone against a mountain with the emblem of the Land of Fire engraved on the disk of sandstone, is one of the few surviving examples of the shinobi era. What was that move you pulled in the quirk assessment test? Last I checked, the Sharingan doesn't do that and you don't have a quirk, the brunette answered. Izuku stopped talking and looked around to check if anyone else was around. Since they were by themselves, he thought it would be beneficial to be honest. He told his friend gravely, can you keep a secret? This is about as sensitive as the Jinchuriki were back in the shinobi era. What? Asked Katsuki. I technically have a quirk now, but it was transferred to me from someone else. Izuku clarified. In denial, the bomber stated, transferred? That's not possible. there's been no evidence of that being a thing. He was informed by the Uchiha descendant that, oh, it is very real. If a quirk could be passed from person to person, would you want that to be public knowledge? He asked. For his part, Katsuki had no response to that one. It made sense. It was wise to keep your peculiarity a secret if you discovered that it may be inherited by a chosen individual. If not, villains would be relentlessly pursuing you. He conceded, all right, you've made your point. He questioned, who'd you even get it from, anyway? Izuku responded, much to his friend's surprise, All Might. What? He gasped, his eyes wide, hardly suppressing a cry. Izuku admitted, yeah, I didn't expect it either. With a severe scowl, he said, but I'm trusting you to take this secret to the grave. Don't make me regret telling you. Izuku was taking this secret seriously, friend or not, and would make sure Katsuki knew how crucial it was. The Pomeranian informed him, yeah, I got it. Later, now that homeroom was about to start, it goes without saying that things were moving very slowly. Aizawa started by saying, all right, let's review the battle results. Midoriya, Usagi, while your combat performance was admirable, the lack of long-reach abilities or gadgets is a factor in your loss, he said. Izuku nodded in agreement as Kagaya said, we're aware. We plan on learning the wall walking technique when we have time. The underground hero nodded, okay, good. Bakugo, setting up those clay spiders as a contingency in case Midoriya or Usagi got by you was a good call. Planning ahead is a valuable asset, he stated to the terrorist. Katsuki nodded, and his master nodded back. One shinobi practice is to always plan ahead. Uraraka, you keeping the bomb out of reach of your opponents was a smart strategy. Though expect that to be a one-off. Midoriya and Usagi will learn from this and fix their mistake, he said to the brunette. The brunette nodded, yes sir. Now, this next activity will help decide your future. The erasure hero informed them. He instructed them, you need to pick a class representative. With the exception of Izuku and Kagaya, the crazed clamor of youths who wanted the position for themselves began. The pair said bluntly together, meh, politics aren't our thing. At that point, Iida decided to speak up and suggest that they cast their votes for their leader. Kagaya murmured to her lover, he just wants us all to vote for him. Her lover agreed. Izuku agreed and said, but it's definitely the best way to settle things. Later, Izuku received 5 votes shortly after the voting, about 10 minutes later, which infuriated him because he had publicly stated that politics wasn't his thing. Momo served as his deputy representative. With his right eyebrow twitching in annoyance, the descendant of Uchiha moaned, looks like nobody heard me over the noise earlier. The wealthy girl shrugged and said, you'll have to get used to it anyway, in retrospect. Izuku groaned, although it was clear that he was not interested in the job. True enough, I guess. Katsuki deadpanned, okay, who voted for Deku? Knowing full well how his boyhood friend felt about politics. Kagaya snorted as Zero asked, what, did you honestly think that anyone would vote for you? To the tape-armed teenager, she replied, no he didn't. Izuku just hates politics. Izuku groaned and sat down, saying, honestly, I still want to give the job to someone else. Only 2 votes, Iida moaned, as the result devastated him. Kagaya informed him, you really ought to have voted for yourself, Iida. Later, now at the cafeteria, Izuku was eating some katsudon with a sullen expression on his face while Kagaya attempted to cheer him up. Izuku was clearly not happy with his current situation, as Ochako and Iida could see. The bespectacled teenager asked, why do you seem so angry about this? I'm sure you'll define. After all, you saw that there was more to the entrance exam. A representative needs that kind of insight, he said. Regardless, the fact remains I have no desire to be involved in anything political, Izuku sighed. It's something we both share. There are a lot of times where politics can screw people over, and that has soured our tastes for anything in that field. Kagaya went on. Who did you vote for, Iida? You sounded like you really wanted to be the representative, Ochako remarked. She went on, I mean, you do look the part. The young woman with the white hair smirked and joked, it's because of the glasses, isn't it? Iida exclaimed angrily, hey, outward appearances have nothing to do with that, and then shook his head. Attracting his friend's attention, he went on, besides, being qualified for a job and wanting it are 2 different things. My family's hero agency has taught me that much. Hero agency? Asked Kagaya. Izuku asked, wait, which hero agency is this? Forget I said anything. The teenager gasped, trying to sidestep the subject, but based on the intensity of their looks, it was impossible. He groaned, "All right, fine. Tell me, how familiar are you with the Turbo Hero?" "Ingenium," he said. "He's the 12th most popular hero with 48 sidekicks at his Tokyo agency. Izuku is listed." "Why?" he inquired. Kagaya inquired, "You know him or something?" To the other's astonishment, the speedster declared, "He's my older brother." She gasped, "Hold up, for real?" Ingenium is an unmatched commander who honors the hero code. As the second eldest Iida's son, I strive to be just like him. Iida was beaming. Kagaya hummed, "So I'm not the only one from a prominent family, I see." Ochako wondered, "Why didn't you say anything, Iida?" but couldn't quite figure out why. The speedster sighed and said, "I was afraid that people would treat me differently if they knew about my family." Izuku raised an eyebrow and asked incredulously, "You do realize that Kagaya is from a similar family in terms of status, right?" The teen with the blue hair admitted, "Point taken." Kagaya sighed and tossed her hair aside, saying, "It's rather annoying to be honest. I'm always getting so many lecherous looks from so many men that I couldn't care less about." She exhaled. Izuku moaned in frustration, "They're still a thing, even when it's blatantly clear that I'm her boyfriend and fiancé." With a wince, Ochako said, "Wow. That bad? A curse of being the most beautiful girl in school for so long, I suppose." Kagaya murmured, "I don't see why so many guys are hung up on me specifically. I mean, there are plenty of attractive women in this school." She went on. "Like you, Sue, Mina, Toru and Momo for example." She said, "Honestly, I'm quite shocked that there hasn't been at least a dozen men trying to get in bed with either of you," she said. "I'm not even that good looking," Ochako exclaimed, perspiring. Kagaya deadpanned, her expression devoid of laughter at the self-deprecating remark. "Ochako, I've seen what you look like sans clothing. Trust me when I say this. With an ample C-cup bosom like yours, paired with those long curvaceous legs, slender waist, full hourglass figure, luscious thighs, peach-shaped ass and those wide child-ready hips of yours, you should have men falling over themselves to get you in bed. Plain and simple," she said with accuracy. Izuku said nonchalantly, "Trust her, she knows what she's talking about." The Otsutsuki girl cried out in frustration, "It's honestly a travesty that you haven't been asked out yet. A travesty, I tell you." The alarms abruptly began to sound before anything could be said about that. As a result, the majority of the students in the cafeteria began to hurry out. In the meantime, Iida sought clarification. "Hey, what's going on?" he asked a pupil in his third year. Before hastily leaving, the student retorted, "This is a level 3 breach. This has never happened in the time I've been here." The cafeteria became a stampede, and Kagaya moaned, "Oh fuck all kinds of duck." Then, to make matters worse, they ended up in the hallway. Many others were experiencing some major problems as a result of the pupils' fright and frantic flight from the breach. An example would be Izuku and Kagaya, who were having difficulty maintaining their relationship. Ochako cried out, "Oh geez. This is turning into a total mob." "Too late. It already has," cried Kagaya as the students withdrew, trampling her underfoot. "Kagaya!" Izuku exclaimed in concern, struggling to reach her against the current. As he was pressed up against a window, Iida growled, "Ah, what's causing this?" He could see the push of everyone outside. "The press? Oh, for the love of," he moaned, then turned and saw Ochako right away. He lunged for her and yelled over the crowd, "Uraraka, quickly, make me float." The brunette said, "On it," as she grabbed Iida's hand and removed his weight. The blue-haired teenager instantly floats and fixes his eyes on some pipes above the exit door. He turned his quirk on and flew at them, spinning like a wheel as he oriented himself at them. He took a breath as soon as he touched down and grasped the pipes to save himself from falling. He shouted as loudly as he could, "Listen!" and the crowd paused to stare at him. "Keep calm, it's just the press outside. We're UA students, the best of the best, and we need to show that," he went on. Many people in the audience jumped when Izuku yelled, "Not to mention some of you jackasses trampled all over my fiancé." As the green-haired teenager shoved a few upperclassmen away from Kagaya, who was moaning in agony as he lifted her up bridal style. He proceeded in a reprimanding tone, making everyone look down in shame. "Shame on every single one of you, letting your panic take over like this. Now look at what happened. You've injured one of your fellow students," he said. The crowd then parted for Izuku as the Red Sea parted for Moses as he began to make his way to the infirmary. The students were all afraid to look Izuku in the eye. Later, In front of the class, a furious Izuku stood, finished with today. It was evident to all that Izuku was deeply affected by Kaguya's ordeal. I'll be completely blunt with you guys. I think I just don't have the patience to be the class representative, the child stated to his peers. So, I've decided to pass the job along to Iida, he said. Aizawa asked, are you absolutely sure about this? The kid with the viridian hair asked, very. I'm sure you heard about my explosion in the crowd during the alarm from one of the others? The man narrowed his brows in annoyance and said, I did. When the panicked crowd hurt one of his students, he was everything but pleased. What a bunch of irrational idiots. I assume it won't take long for Usagi to rejoin us? He asked. The teenager nodded, remembering the medical report Recovery Girl had given him. According to Recovery Girl, she suffered some bruising and minor internal injuries. She can patch her up, but there's going to be some bruises she'll need to heal from on her own. Aizawa bowed and said, understood. He turned to the speedster and asked, that said Iida, do you accept the role of class representative? The bespectacled teenager nodded and bowed, saying, yes. Thank you, sir. I will endeavor to fulfill my duties as required. With a bow to his friend, he said, and thank you, Midoriya, for this opportunity. The teen with viridian hair nodded, no problem. Time skip. After a few days. Sitting in Principal Nezu's office with Kaguya, Izuku asked, wait, why did you call us here before class? The Chimera, who might have been an albino stoat, responded by telling them, because something regarding the two of you specifically has come up. As Nezu produced 2 pamphlets and gave them to the couple, Kaguya asked, that being. Nezu said to them, you might want to take a look at these. This was done by the Class 1A power couple, and as they read it, they both grew more shocked and agitated. Kaguya shrieked, a hero dating program? Seriously? Izuku questioned, wait, why are they looking at us specifically? Because the HPSC see the chemistry between both of you. This, coupled with the fact you two are already engaged, has made them view you two as the ideal couple for promoting hero couples as a whole. Nezu responded with a clarification. Seeing the underlying meaning behind this behavior, Izuku remarked, I'm sensing something more to this. I won't lie that I also suspect that they're likely looking for the both of you to produce a number of possible children to stock the next generation. Nezu gave a nod. Well, we were already planning on 10 children over a period of time, Kaguya acknowledged. Nezu blinked in amazement and said, my word, you two must want quite the large family. Izuku nodded and said, it's part of my plan to bring back our clans. Well, I think it'd be best if you went ahead and gave it some thought. Nezu replied to him. He told the two, but in the meantime, you two should get to class. After that, the 2 involved pupils went to their homeroom. They made the decision to discuss what they had just discovered. Izuku addressed his fiancée, Kaguya, how do you feel about all this? The young woman shrugged and said, honestly, if the HPSC wants to sponsor us, then they're helping us with our love life. Her purring voice sent a chill up Izuku's spine as she continued, especially since it basically means we can start our family sooner. Kaguya, the lad said in a foreboding tone, alerting her to the fact that he was on the verge of manhandling her into the following week. When the 2 arrived in their homeroom and sat down, the young woman just giggled. Later, Aizawa informed the students, okay, today's training is going to be different. Specifically, it's rescue training. Really? The students asked. The erasure hero nodded and said, I, All Might, and another expert will teach this lesson on an off-campus location. Izuku hummed, this should be interesting. Perhaps I could practice water walking, he thought to himself. Shortly later, Izuku observed as the students piled onto a bus, so, looks like we're gonna be riding this open. As they sat down next to each other, Kaguya nodded and hummed, apparently. Before long, they were in motion. Iida complained, the bus's layout ruined my boarding strategy. Sato advised him, don't worry too much about it, Iida. If we're pointing out the obvious, then there's something I have to say, Sue said. She looked at Izuku and added, about you, actually. The boy from Uchiha cocked an eyebrow and said, what about me? The frog girl answered, you used a move in the Quirk assessment test. It was a lot like All Might's. She questioned, is it because you copied it? Izuku shrugged in response, saying, I did take some inspiration from him, I'll admit. Kirishima asked, but the Sharingan can't copy Quirks, can it? In response, the youngster with the viridian hair said, I'm not entirely sure what the limits are in this day and age. I'm keeping a lookout for signs of any change in the function of it. He had to keep one for all a secret, so that was a bit of a lie. Despite being aware of this, Katsuki remained silent for apparent reasons. The redhead shrugged and said, "It must be pretty nice to have all that firepower though. My hardening is super strong and can destroy bad guys in a fight, but it's not all that flashy," he exhaled. Kagaya added, "That's not all that true." It was obvious that Izuku had influenced her since she went on. "You could act as a living barricade to protect civilians from things like gunfire, or harden your limbs to increase the damage your blows do. Yeah, I think you'll make a great pro with a quirk like that." Izuku gave a wink. The boy hummed. "Really? Seems it'd be better if I had something flashier. But if we're looking for the real pro quirks, it's Todoroki and Bakugo," he said. Sue said, "Yeah, but with Bakugo's attitude, I don't see him being very popular." Katsuki's brow became annoyed. He shouted, "What did you say? I'll kick your ass." With her argument established, the frog girl questioned rhetorically, "See? Ya no, we basically just met you." Kaminari smiled boldly. He casually added, "So it's pretty telling that we know that your personality is basically flaming crap mixed with garbage." This made Ochako laugh out loud and Izuku, Kagaya, and Jiro snort. The blonde yelled, "I'll make you regret choosing the hero course, you loser," he growled, "I'll kill you." Momo covered her mouth and said, "What a disgusting conversation. Wow, I do not hear Kachan get teased nearly often enough." Izuku chuckled. "Same," howled his fiancée. Later, by this time, the class had reached their destination, which was a huge dome. The space hero 13 was there to greet them. The Uchiha boy cried out, "Whoa, it's 13, and Ochako became ecstatic. The girl exclaimed with delight, "My favorite hero. You've rescued dozens of people with your quirk." The woman grinned and said, "Hello everyone, I can't wait to show you what's inside." Aizawa asked, "Where's All Might? Isn't he supposed to be here?" Izuku noticed 13's silent response, holding up 3 fingers, and deduced what had happened with his mentor. He went up to his limit. He's back at UA resting. The subterranean hero moaned in frustration. "That man is the height of irresponsibility," he said. "We'll have to manage without him, I guess." After being granted admission, the children were enthralled by what appeared to be an entire amusement park's worth of rescue scenarios to test out. Izuku and Kagaya were very interested in practicing for water walking in the shipwreck area. With a smirk, 13 said, "Welcome to the Unforeseen Simulation Joint, USJ for short." Most of the students in the class asked at once, "Just like Universal Studios Japan?" "No, not like that." 13 let out a frustrated groan. She found that tendency really bothersome. She ended by saying, "Now, before we get started, I have a couple things to say. Maybe 3, or 4, or 5. With a sigh of mild irritation, the pupils said, "We get it." The woman cleared her throat and groaned, Right. Anyway, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of my quirk, Black Hole, correct?" she said. "Yeah. A lot of civilians owe their lives to you because of you saving them with it." Ochako gave a wink. "While that is true, I could easily kill someone if I'm not careful enough." The lady nodded. "There are a lot of quirks out there that could kill without the user meaning to. It's part of the reason we live in such a regulated society, to keep such things from happening," she went on. The teens became reflective as a result of this lecture. But before anything else could be said, a huge purple and black doorway materialized, and a number of ominous-looking individuals began to emerge. This made it clear to everyone that something was amiss. Ochako stepped back and remarked cautiously, "I don't think this is part of the training." Aizawa shocked the students by yelling, "You're right. All of you stay back. Those are real villains." Instead, Izuku swiftly turned on his Sharingan and looked around the group of bad guys. "Sensei, I'm not seeing any chakra users among the villains. That should make fighting them easier," he stated. After donning his goggles, the erasing hero nodded and said, "Excellent, thanks, Midoriya." Izuku, however, passed him and glanced down at the people below before he could jump in. The child continued, "That being said, that also means that they won't be expecting me." He then leapt to the ground in a high crouch and briefly wriggled his fingers as he confronted 3 of the villains. He smiled and charged at them, saying, "Let's see how well you do against the legendary power of Uchiha." "As Midoriya nuts!" exclaimed Mina, startled. "He is going directly toward them." Kaminari continued. The green-haired boy blasted into the baddies, sending them flying seconds later. He then began kicking and hitting them everywhere and using his sword to assault them. A powerful paper bomb was slapped against another, causing other people to get trapped in the ensuing explosion, and he even caught a knife that was thrown at him and sent it back at the thrower into his neck. "I'm getting in there, I refuse to let him fight alone. Aizawa yelled as he and his pupil charged into battle, eliminating baddies one after another. However, he would speak with him about this later. Izuku escaped a burrowing villain who attempted to grasp him and then stabbed him in the face after cross-kicking two other guys as he continued to fight. Following some more combat, he went towards a man who attempted to cut him down, imprisoned him in a genjutsu by having him look him in the eye, and then grabbed a man by the throat who attempted to blindside him. He asked, "Do you want to dance with me as well?" He was launched through the air and landed on his feet before he could receive a response. The boy, unfazed by this result, merely wiped the blood off his sword with a dramatic blade wipe gesture and brushed the dust off his shoulders. This provided Aizawa an even greater advantage and appeared to unnerve the villains opposing him. The Uchiha, Senju, Uzumaki bred heir then skidded in front of the shipwreck zone entrance, where 4 villains were located, and made a couple more hand signals. He roared, "Fire style, majestic destroyer flame," as he spit out a genuinely enormous wall of flame. A villain shouted, "Holy shit," as he and his companions were thrown into the sea. At that moment, 4 or 5 water villains seemed to put out the fire, enveloping the area in a fog that let Izuku fight on. During this time, the 2 leaders observed the events with curious glances. At least one of them did. The other 2 were irritated, and the third was nearly unconscious. It would seem All Might isn't here, and there also appears to be a very capable student among the class. The mist villain commented. The second figure, a man with hands all over him, groaned in a raspy voice, "He's definitely going to be a pain to deal with. Scatter him with the others, make sure they get mangled," he said. Izuku yelled, "Wood style. Wood clones," as he conjured out a handful of wood clones that rushed back to the others to continue the battle. Then he made the decision to use his ace. After a few hand signals, he exclaimed, "Lighting style. Chidori, 1,000 birds," and began to charge the villain while covered in hands. He was enveloped in purple fog before he could make contact. Before he knew it, he was plummeting toward the shipwreck area's water. Since he was still unfamiliar with water walking, all he could do was brace himself as he plunged into the water. He was looking about bewildered when he noticed a villain swimming swiftly in his direction. As he opened his jaws, the fish-like figure declared, "Catch of the day." He yelled, "Nothing personal, kid, but you gotta die." Izuku pulled out a kunai and was about to throw it when Su unexpectedly appeared with Kagaya and crashed into the villain. As they went, the young woman with the white hair gave him a knife hand to the back of his head. "Asui. Kagaya," Izuku thought, startled. The frog girl grabbed him with her tongue and said, "Hey, Midoriya," before swimming toward the boat. The boy said, "Phew, that was crazy," on his lips. Kagaya snarled to herself, "That jackass had it coming. Nobody threatens my man and gets away with it." Izuku held his fiancée close and whispered, "I'm just glad you're okay." "Well, this is turning out to be a terrible day of class," Su murmured. As the baddies resurfaced, the lavender-eyed girl pondered, "Yeah. How exactly are we gonna get out of this mess?" Izuku looked around and said, "I doubt I can water walk out of here. Those villains will pick me off if I try. Even then, I still don't know how to do that," he continued. Su agreed and said, "Yeah, we'll need a solid plan." Izuku informed her, his eyes shifting, "Don't worry." As they prepared to fight, he continued, "Just follow my lead."
So this was it for the series. I hope you enjoyed it. To watch more series like this, subscribe to my channel. Till then, bye bye.